Stand up, New York Giant fans. Super pumped up. I've been on Ryan's channel before. I think maybe he's been on once. I think this is the first time he's been on my channel. So if not, the second time. So really excited to have Ryan on the channel. Been on his channel before. Great content creator. Who's more appropriate to talk to this week? He actually reached out to me to come on his channel, and I was running behind on my Twitter messages, and I saw it late. Otherwise, I would have came on. Great guy, great channel, but this week we're enemies. So excited to chop it up with you, Ryan. But his link's going to be in the description below. If you could tolerate New York Jets content, if you're a Giants fan, go over there and check him out. But really good guy. And Ryan, thanks for taking the time out tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking ball with you. Like Chris and I will go behind the scenes and just kind of like message each other. It's like, yo, I think your defensive line's pretty good. Oh, I think you're pretty good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to see what your thoughts are on everything.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really boring but fun game. I think it's going to be a close game. Obviously, we don't play each other that often. This is the first time we've played in 4 years. You guys have had our numbers of late. Last time we beat you was the Victor Cruz touchdown when we went to win the Super Bowl. But you guys have had our numbers of late. I think it's a lot closer, and I think you agree with me. We talked about it before the stream. And the spread suggests it's close. It's a 3-point spread for the Jets. But I think a lot of people going into this game, rightfully so, when they look at what the Jets have done this year, you guys should have beat the Chiefs. Your defense kept Pat Mahomes in check pretty much that entire game. And Zack Wilson looked tremendous in that game. You guys beat the Bills after Aaron Rodgers went down. You beat the Eagles, a team we never beat. And you've been competitive every week outside of the Cowboys game where you guys kind of fell apart in the fourth quarter. So you guys have been, if you're a Jets fan, you got to be encouraged with the way that this season has started. But I think your style of play lends itself to a close football game. And I think the Giants, the way they've played the last 2 weeks, they've gotten back to what they were able to be successful with last year, which is holding on to the football, grinding out the clock, relying on that defense. And the Giants defense has started to come alive. So I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be a game that's decided between 3 to 6 points either way. And I think we're going to see a lot of field goals.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the defensive side for the Giants, your guys' front seven's pretty stout. Our offensive line's a little shaky. Obviously, seeing Leonard Williams again, going to be a little interesting for the New York Jets side of things. We have not been able to convert in the red zone. That's really what it comes down to. We can move the ball a good amount between the 20s, but not getting it and punching it in. So it's been frustrating from a Jet fan perspective because you see this great defense, you see the special teams really showing out, but the offense just can't seem to carry its own water right now. But if you had told Jet fans, hey, Aaron Rodgers is going to get knocked out 4 plays into the season, and you're going to be 3-3 at the bye week with one of your wins being against the Philadelphia Eagles and Zack Wilson's best game is going to come against the Chiefs, I wouldn't have believed you, and I'd say I'll sign up for that 10 days a week.
Yeah, I think Zack Wilson's if you're a Jets fan, you have to be encouraged with the way that, specifically in that Chiefs game, because I've watched like 3 or 4 Jet games this year. That was the one I had my eyes glued to the TV screen. He looked really good in that game. He looked like he was worthy of the number 2 pick. So he's not a guy that I'm just going to discount going into this game. And he's got dual threat capability. He could run the football as well with his legs. So it's definitely something that the Giants are going to have to keep their eye out for. But I also think an inexperienced quarterback, similar to last week when we played Washington, is the type of quarterback that Wink Martindale could really take advantage of. Of course, his type of scheme, it's not a defense that you see every week. He blitzes like crazy. He sends blitzes from all over the field. So I could see that presenting turnover opportunities for the Giants. They've created turnovers in their last 3 games. They didn't have a turnover in any game before that. So the defense is certainly starting to hit its high gear. So I think this game comes down to who makes the fewer mistakes. That's what I see in this game. Obviously, on your offensive side of the ball, the guy I worry about the most is Garrett Wilson. Mm-hmm. And your running back is damn good too with Breece Hall. But I think that'll be a great matchup. I think that's a matchup everybody's going to have circled. Deonte Banks, if he's matched up on him, he's been really good for us, the rookie corner, going up against Garrett Wilson. But he's incredible. I think, was it the Bills game this year where he caught that touchdown in the corner of the end zone with like one hand where he was fighting the guy off? That guy's awesome.
Dude, that should have been a pick every which way. Zack Wilson throws that ball and it's going right to Trey White, and Garrett Wilson brings his opposite hand in front of Trey White and like taps it back to himself. It was unreal. Garrett and Breece are like 2 of the best at their position right now, and they're not getting the like accolades and the yards and the touchdowns because our offense has kind of been a little stagnant right now, but they are every bit as elite as any wide receiver running back combo in the league.
Yeah, you guys are certainly dangerous, and we'll see how it all plays out. I want to say hello to a couple of people in the chat. What's going on, Jax? What's going on, Toe? What's going on, Chris Peace in the chat? V-Man in the chat. El Vero in the chat. He says, mission, Zack Wilson, let's go Giants. Well, that's always the mission. Get after the quarterback, create turnover opportunities. And I think we're going to have sack opportunities and turnover opportunities because as bad as our offensive line is, and it's bad and it's worse than yours, your offensive line is not very good either. Similar to last week when we took on Washington. I think you guys are 27th in the league in terms of sacks given up. Even though you're giving up a much lower rate than we are. We're like 5.5 per game. You're like 3.3. But you're certainly not allergic to giving up quarterback pressure. So I think there'll be opportunities there for this defense.
Yeah, for sure. Zack Wilson definitely can get the blitz can get to him. Like if you guys are going to pressure him the way Wink is probably going to pressure him, you see the way Belichick does it in New England, they're going to try and come after Zack and they're going to force him to win this game with his arm. I think if you guys key in on Breece Hall and you force Zack into some rough situations, you guys are going to have a chance for sure. And like we said earlier, I think like 12-9, I could see this game not being high scoring at all.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's going to be, I have it 17-16. And obviously I'm biased. I'm a Giants fan, but that's where I have it. I have it in the high teens. I don't unless there's a defensive touchdown, which is very possible. I don't think either team reaches 20 because I unless there's a ton of turnovers in the game, which, like I said, is very possible. Let me ask you from a Jets fan perspective. I don't know how often you watch the Giants because obviously you're busy with your team. What do you think of Tyrod Taylor the last couple of weeks? What do you think of the quarterback situation with the New York Giants? Because that's been a huge conversation piece for Giants fans because obviously we signed Daniel Jones to the big contract. As a Jet fan, you're familiar with the whole your fan base with the tanking, suck for Sam. You've been there before as a Jets fan, and you guys wanting to tank for a quarterback. Where are you with this situation with the New York Giants? What do you think the performance that Taylor's put forth the last 2 weeks means about Daniel Jones?
So I want to take it back to the end of last year and the offseason because I think there's context that has to be put on that contract. You guys were kind of in a very odd position of either having to move off of Daniel Jones or allow Saquon to walk. And Saquon being the talent that he is, you wanted to ideally franchise him. Running back wise, you don't want to hand out the massive contract. And quarterback wise, you're hoping that Daniel Jones can kind of sprout into the quarterback you want him to be. And I don't know what his fifth-year option was going to end up being because you guys declined it, right? And that's why you had to.
I think it was 22.
Okay, and he got what, 40 a year? So he definitely.
Yeah, he got 40, but the way that it's constructed, he got on paper he got 40. He got 82 guaranteed, I think it was, but he got 40 million a year on paper.
I was gonna say I thought it was a year and a half, so it's 2 years guaranteed, pretty much. Then
essentially 2 years guaranteed. Yeah,
I think that contract made plenty of sense. Some things just kind of bite you in the butt, and unfortunately, because of the offensive line play, I think that contract looks worse than it actually is. Like you guys haven't had Evan Neal for whatever reason, just cannot figure it out on the right-hand side. And then you've been without Andrew Thomas on the left-hand side. You lost John Michael Schmitz for a little bit, which I think he is back for this week, if I'm not mistaken.
He's questionable, but he's trending towards playing tomorrow. Yes. I heard of it.
So I think the offensive line has played a really big factor into where you're currently standing right now. But I know a lot of my Giant fan buddies are not thrilled with Daniel Jones and they're upset with the contract. It's like I'm in Giant country. There's not a whole lot of Jet fans like by me geographically. I'm in northern New Jersey. And when I look at Tyrod Taylor from a Jet fan perspective, like who would I have preferred to play? I think I would have preferred to play Daniel Jones because I think there's a little more maybe panic that you could cause him with your pass rush. But I think getting Saquon back, starting to get a little bit healthier offensive line, I think that may be why Tyrod has looked a little bit better the last, you say 2 weeks is what he's played, I think.
Last 2 weeks.
Yeah. I don't know if I necessarily, I think you guys should probably be looking for a quarterback and ideally Jones, what is it? It's his neck, I think, right? That's
second time he's had a neck injury now. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard some people say they're not 100% sure if he's actually going to play again this season. I don't know if they're still.
That changed today. It came out, and I saw exactly what you're talking about. But I think it was, I forgot who it was, but one of the major beat reporters. It wasn't Ian Rappaport. Maybe it was Schefter. Came out and said that it's trending towards he's going to be playing by the Cowboys game.
So I definitely thought that Daniel Jones was going to be Josh Allen light. I've kind of been saying that. And then when they got Daboll, I was like, this is the perfect hire. This makes perfect sense. I really like Kafka. I know the offense has been like stagnant, so I'm sure a lot of Giant fans are probably not thrilled with him right now. Yeah. But I think you guys have the right coaches in the building. It's just a weird offensive line compounding issue. And then if Jones is shell shocked, or Tyrod isn't necessarily making all the plays he needs to make. Tyrod to me has always kind of been that middle of the road, will give you enough quarterback play to kind of gauge the rest of the roster, but you won't necessarily win a lot of games with him. I won't pretend that I've watched him super closely since his time in, I think the last time I really watched him closely was when he was in Buffalo.
The Bills, when he played the Jets twice a year. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel for where Giant fans are right now, but at the very least, you have Daniel Jones coming back next year. That can be the bridge quarterback for, if you decide to go that route in the draft. Like, let's say you guys have a top 5 pick, you get Drake May, Caleb Williams, someone along those lines, and then you let them sit behind Jones. And worst case scenario, Jones looks good and you have a young tradable chip, or you decide to move on to the young guy and you trade Jones. At the very least, you have a bridge quarterback, which is something that the Jets really wish they had with Zack Wilson. We had 2 years of Zack just getting thrown to the wolves. And, most of us wanted some type of veteran presence here, or a veteran coach. Sadly, Greg Knapp, the Jets, I believe he was the passing game coordinator at the time, passed away just before Zack's rookie season. And we never had that, veteran leadership. So at least Daniel Jones, if he's not going to be the guy in the now, he can at least bridge you to the guy that could be your future.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I'm with you at this point. I mean, obviously when they signed him, and I'm glad that you spoke with a level head. Mm-hmm. Like, you get a lot of these people on Twitter and on ESPN and Giants fans that say, oh, well, they should have just started Tyrod Taylor at the beginning of the year and let Daniel Jones go, or they should have signed Baker Mayfield. No. I'm glad that you think with a level head and you realize that this was probably the only option that Shane had. The question was, how are you going to sign him? Was it going to be a tag, or was it going to be a multi-year deal that you could kind of maneuver out of after 2 years if things go the way that it looks like they're going right now? That was really the logical option for Joe Shane, given the fact that we were picking 25th, given the fact we made the playoffs. Jones played well last year. You figured he was going to get better year or two in the offense. It hasn't happened for whatever reason, whether it be due to him regressing, whether it be due to Andrew Thomas getting hurt, or a culmination of everything. Maybe the play calling's gotten worse too. So I'm sure there's several factors, but I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that's kind of where we're at. That was kind of my mindset when we signed him to the deal to begin with. Was worst case scenario, he is exactly what you just said. He's a bridge. He's a guy that plays here for 2 more years, and then you make that change, or it doesn't prevent you from drafting a quarterback if the team really bombs this year and you're picking top 4, top 5. I'm just sick of having these conversations. I'm sure you are too as a Jets fan. You've been through it with Sam Darnold. You went through it with Zack Wilson. You're probably going through it again with a lot of Jet fans, even though Zack Wilson's playing well this year. So it just sucks. It just sucks to be where we are right now as an organization. But I think the one silver lining is what you hit home with. I think we should at least have some hope and faith with this coaching staff. I do think Dable has a good head on his shoulders, and I do think Shane at least has a plan, something we can't say for our previous GM. So we got that going for us. We have some pieces, but it's been the same story here for the last 12 years. The offensive line is dreadful, and the key piece, the guy that we were all looking forward to improve this year, was Evan Neal, and we haven't seen it. And until that line gets good, I'm going to continue to say it, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, and I fully understand if you're picking top 3 or 4 in a quarterback-rich draft class, you take the quarterback. It's the most important position. But at the end of the day, we're not beating the Dallas Cowboys with Micah Parsons, and we're not beating the Philadelphia Eagles with their pass rush until this line gets to where they need to be. And that, to me, is the main overall problem with this Giants team. It has been the main overall problem with this Giants team for the last 12 years.
Yeah, the Jets are kind of in that same boat. We've had a bad offensive line really since our championship runs back in 2009, 2010. It's kind of been trying to figure out those pieces. I think Mangold retired in 2015 or 16. D'Brickashaw Ferguson was around the same time. And you could just see how many offensive line pieces the Jets have tried to swap in year over year. I mean, we spent a first-round pick on Elijah Vera Tucker. We spent a first-round pick on Mekhi Becton. Now Becton has missed 2 seasons. He's been healthy so far, knock on wood. So for this season, Elijah Vera Tucker has 2 season-ending injuries the last 2 years. So now there's some confusion there. We were trying to move off of our center and Connor McGovern, wound up drafting Joe Tippmann in the second round. And we wind up going to McGovern at center, and Tippmann's been playing guard, and then he gets knocked out. So there's this confusion on the Jets offensive line side of things as well. And I think it's just frustrating because you can't grade the rest of your roster when your quarterback's laying on his back. And there's some degree of onus that has to go on the quarterback as well. Because one thing I was looking forward to with Aaron Rodgers coming to town was at least the ball getting released in close to 2 seconds. When you see the ball come out in 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, most quarterbacks are going to be in pretty good shape, and most offensive lines can at least hold for that long. When you start seeing guys hold the ball for 2.7, 3 seconds, now you're worrying because now they're scrambling around. It's not usually boding well. And I think right before, I want to say it was the Chiefs game for the Jets, we started shuffling some of our offensive line pieces around, and maybe that's something you guys decide to try at some point and just figure out what your best 5 offensive linemen are. Like right now, the Jets only have 2 offensive linemen that started at their positions when we started week 1, and that's Laken Tomlinson at left guard and Connor McGovern at center. We have a new left tackle, new right guard since that time, but I do think our offensive line is in a better space than we were week 1.
Yeah, I don't think our offensive line is. Well, maybe slightly better. You know, a lot of Giants fans have talked about how the line's has looked better the last 2 weeks, but it's still been really bad. I think we gave up 5 or 6 sacks last week with Taylor. It's just, I do think, like you said, hopefully they could use this year to mature their younger players. Maybe you move Neal to the guard at some point. A lot of Giants fans have talked about that. I actually think at this point, even though we took him 7th overall, he may be better suited to play the guard position because he's so slow out of his stance. Mm-hmm. He's powerful. He might be better on the interior. So I think that's inevitable. I think that's probably the move they're going to make if Evan Neal doesn't get a lot better on the right side. But yeah, it sounds to me like the way that we're talking, expect a lot of sacks in this game or a lot of QB pressures on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. When I think about your Jets defense, obviously the first 2 guys that I think about, one is Sauce Gardner, who I wanted more than anything in last year's draft. Obviously, he didn't get to us, so I can't get mad at Joe Shane for that. And I was happy with Kayvon after you guys took him, but he's incredible. And then the other, of course, is Quinnen Williams, another guy that you guys took early in the draft, one of the better interior defensive linemen in football, and you're going up against one of the better interior defensive linemen in football, and Dexter Lawrence. So that, to me, is going to decide this game on both sides of the ball. Your defensive line versus our offensive line, our defensive line versus your offensive line. And I think that's the strength of both of these teams. I think your front 7 is really good. I think our front 7 is the best part of our football team. So, and 2 weak offensive lines, like we've been saying. So, which quarterback makes fewer mistakes? That's really what this game boils down to. Who is able to hold on to the football? If you hold on to the ball, you're probably going to win this game.
Probably. 100%. Turnovers are going to be a huge, huge part of this game. And it's also just going to be how healthy are your guys going into later parts of the game? Because the Jets are deep on the defensive line. Like that is a scary thing when you go against the Jets. Jermaine Johnson, 1st round pick, has really blossomed nicely. John Franklin Myers has been a good edge rusher for us. And then our next rung of guys, you've got Carl Lawson, and then you have Bryce Huff, who is an undrafted free agent who has absolutely been balling out for the New York Jets. He has one of the highest pressure rates in the league. He's going to end up being a free agent at the end of this year. And Jet fans are kind of in this weird conundrum of, hey, we just spent a 1st round pick on Will McDonald this past year. We spent the 1st round pick that we traded up for in Jermaine Johnson last year. But this kid, Bryce Huff, is undrafted, and he's blowing the doors off like the best edge rushers in the NFL right now. Like, are we just going to allow this guy to walk? Or are we going to franchise tag him? Are we going to extend him? And then similarly, so I kind of look at like Bryce Huff, almost like your Saquon Barkley to some extent, only, positional value is a little different there. But then Mekhi Becton, we did not exercise the 5th year option on him. He's starting to ball out. And now we're going to have to decide, are we going to extend him because we didn't do the 5th year option?
And so he's another guy that he's got an injury history. So you don't know if you want to, he's an interesting case because Mekhi Becton, when he's on the field, he's got talent. I mean, especially in his rookie year, you really saw it, but hasn't been able to stay on the field. So that's going to be a really interesting decision for the Jets next year, what they do with him.
Yeah, personally for Mekhi Becton, I would love to see the transition tag allow another team to set his price and give the Jets the first option of refusal. I think that's the best way to go about it. If you slap him with the franchise tag, now you're negotiating at a base of like $21 million or something like that.
Yeah, it's basically quarterback. Safety's like $19 million.
Yeah.
So the tackle's got to be at least that. Like it's outrageous, the franchise tag for the tackle. So that'll be a tough decision. The Giants next year, their tag decision, I think, is going to come down to, are you going to tag Saquon Barkley? Outside of that, I don't think you tag anybody because McKinney, I'm not bringing back for $19 million a year on the franchise tag. He's the only other guy that you could really think about it with. I think if we don't trade him, I think we're going to tag Barkley again. As much as Barkley may not want to hear that, as unfair as that may be, That's who I think we utilize the tag on next year. And a lot of Giants fans, let me get your take on that too, because the Giants are kind of in limbo right now. And I think the trade deadline's in like 2 days. It's Halloween, right? I think it's on Halloween.
Yep,
So it's
4
right
p.m.
around the corner. So as Giants fans, we're kind of sitting on pins and needles. We look at really the only guy currently on this roster that merits like decent value in return, especially when you factor in the contracts, because Leonard Williams is a good player, as you know, but his contract's outrageous. So you're not going to get much for him. You're not going to get much for Adoree Jackson, especially with the fact that he's hurt. The one guy that would get you something in a trade would be Barkley. But people have said just trade Barkley, get what you can for him. I'm not of that mindset. I'm of the mindset if you can get good value for him, you trade him. If you get a second round pick for him, yeah, I trade him. Once again, he's shown he's injury prone. He's a running back. I get all of that. But I'm not giving him away for a 4th round pick, because I look at it like this. If this season unravels the way that we were talking about, and I don't know if it will, I personally think the Giants can still win 7 or 8 games because their schedule starts to lessen up. The defense has been playing better. But if it does happen where we're picking top 4 or 5, like you talked about earlier, and we do draft a rookie quarterback, I think there's value there to have a player like Saquon Barkley to assist that young rookie quarterback. So I'm not giving this guy away for nothing. I have to get good value to be able to trade Saquon Barkley. That's my mindset on the situation.
Yeah, I fall.
I can tag him again.
I would say I fall right in line. And I did, while you were just talking, I had to look up what the tag on Barkley would be. I think it's over the cap has it at $12.1 million. I don't know if that's just the blanket.
Because he gets a $2 million raise. That's where it would be. Yep.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think he was at 10 or 11 million this year on the tag. So I would absolutely franchise tag him. I think he's worth his weight in gold from a safety valve standpoint for a young quarterback. Or if you're still trying to evaluate Daniel Jones anyway, at the very least, I'd roll into this, go into the offseason, tag him. And then if someone presents an attractive offer come draft time, and maybe there's someone sitting there that you like, then maybe you flip him in the offseason. But $12 million for an elite weapon when he's on the field it's hard to really move off of that. And especially when you can kind of use him as a weapon out of the backfield, like in the receiving game, like screen game things like that. Like he is legitimately one of the best running backs in the league when he's on the field. And if you guys have the cap space and it's not going to kill you, why not?
You bring it, yeah. But if you can get good value for him, you got to entertain him, because he's clearly not in the long-term plans of this team. But I'm not giving him away like some Giants fans. I think feel like we just got to trade him because you got to get something for him. It's not the way I look at it. I'm more than open to bringing Barkley back under the right circumstance. Noah Randolph wants to know, should I start Jermaine Johnson in fantasy?
Wow. So you're playing a defensive fantasy league. Interesting.
IDP, individual defensive players fantasy.
So I really like Jermaine Johnson a lot. Jalen Hurts had 3 interceptions last week. Only one was a bad throw, and it was the final one that kind of sealed the game for them. The 2 interceptions prior were caused because of Jermaine Johnson. So Jermaine Johnson hit, I believe it was Dallas Goedert, and caused the ball to pop into Quinnen Williams' arms. And then Jermaine Johnson smacked Jalen Hurts' arm as he was throwing, and Bryce Hall picked off the ball. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't know if Jermaine Johnson is going to create the value if he's just generating those types of plays without getting the actual statistic. Like he didn't get the interception, he didn't get the sack. So it probably depends on how you score everything. I think he's going to be good if you can get someone like Bryce Huff, him screaming off the right-hand side. If he's going against Evan Neal, Bryce Huff has one of the fastest get off and goes in the NFL, and he's been getting more and more reps. The Jets have been upping his percentage of snaps each and every week. So if you can get him as your defensive player for this week, especially if he's going up against Evan Neal, I think that would be the play over someone like Jermaine Johnson. And that's someone who really likes Jermaine Johnson too.
Yeah, what I'll tell you is if you can get any Jets defensive lineman, take them. Against this Giants offensive line. So this is a good week to have a Jets defensive lineman or even a Giants defensive lineman, I think. I think there's going to be sacks to be had on either side of the ball if you're talking IDP, which is actually a perfect transition into the official sponsor of the channel. Thank you to everybody for being here. It's a fantasy app. If you guys haven't seen it before, I'm going to put the link in the chat. The link is, well, that's not the link. That's my StreamYard link, so don't come in. Sorry about that. I had the wrong link saved because I had to email it to you.
Sorry.
I just won't let people in. But this is the link to the official sponsor of the channel. It's Underdog Fantasy. Go on over there, put in the promo code ETS, and obviously short for Entertainment Talking Sports. You get a 100% match on $100. They're also doing a special promo right now where they match the first 500 for the first 500 that you put in. So going over there, check them out. But I wanted to go over some of the picks with you, Ryan, on this. As we were talking about this game, and it's a pretty easy app to use. It's basically prop picks. You bet the overs, the unders, on player specific. Obviously, there's no lines involved in this. So I was looking at the Jets-Giants game, naturally, because we're going to be talking about it. And we're talking about defense. We're talking about a lot of field goals. So the first thing I do is I go to the Jets line. I look at Greg Zuerlein, 6 points. Well, I think the Jets are going to kick at least 2 field goals, so I'll take him. I look at the Giants, Graham Gano. I think the Giants are going to kick at least 2 field goals. I'll take him. You look at the Jets. The Jets have the 4th best red zone defense in the NFL and the worst red zone offense in the NFL. So what does that say to me? Not a lot of touchdowns on either side of the ball. Of course, the Giants have struggled mightily in terms of scoring touchdowns, all year, outside of the second half against the Arizona Cardinals. So I expect a lot of field goals. Hopefully, Gano doesn't miss it this week. Waller started to come to life, so I took the over on the 43.5. I know the Jets have a good defense, but it just seems a little low for me. Last week, he had almost 100 yards. He's starting to get more involved in the offense. And I look at your defense, and I think it's going to present some trouble for Tyrod Taylor in terms of your secondary, and I think they're going to be forced to use Taylor a bit in the run game. So I actually am going to take the over. I'm going to put this in right now for $20. I get 10-1. So hopefully I win tomorrow. I get $200, but I'm going to take the over on Tyrod Taylor. So what do you for 23.5 rushing yards? So what do you think of those picks?
So it's funny. Before the stream started, Chris and I were talking behind the scenes, and I was like, dude, I love Underdog. Let me tell you about this one pick that I do every single week. It's free money for the New York Jets. Take the opposing team's kicker. So Gano, 100%. Every time that I do that, there's been 5. The Jets have played 6 games. The only game it did not hit for me was the Eagles game when the Eagles scored 2 touchdowns and the Jets shut him out totally after that. So I never got the extra field goals from Elliott over there. But Zuerlein for the Jets has been incredible. They'll let him kick from literally anywhere on the field. He has been really impressive for the Jets. I would say Tyrod rushing for, 23.5 yards? Was that
23.5? Yeah.
I like that. The Jets do have a little bit of concern from a defensive perspective when it comes to running quarterbacks. You saw Russell Wilson have a little bit of success against us. Dak Prescott had a little bit of success against us. Jalen Hurts, to some extent, he didn't have as big of an impact on the ground as I would have thought, but he still had, I think, 40 yards.
He struggled in that game, Jalen Hurts.
It was rough. The Jets defense is making really good quarterbacks look not so good. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, 3 guys that had worse quarterback ratings than Zack Wilson when we face him. So I guess that's maybe a little bit of a dig at Zach at the same time of giving props to the defense. But I like those 3 in particular. The Waller one, I think, is the one that might have me a little bit gun shy. And that's because
tight ends.
Yeah, and it's not so much that we're bad against tight ends for the Jets. It's that a lot of the yardage that has come from tight ends against us has come on broken plays, not tight ends beating us one-on-one or like finding a gap in the zone. It's like someone did the wrong coverage and now there's a 60-yard touchdown. So it's definitely possible. I would say Waller is the size profile that would definitely cause problems for the New York Jets. But of those 4, I think Waller's the one that you might have a little bit of a tougher time getting.
Yeah, I mean, 43.5 is a pretty high number for a tight end. I think he'll go over, but I mean, it's more so to do with the fact that we don't really have many other, dangerous weapons in the passing game. The one guy that I will say that I've been excited about, and it got way too much hype in the preseason game when we played you guys. Everybody was saying
Jalen Hyatt.
Because Jalen Hyatt beat
dude.
on a double move, and people were acting like it was like the Odell Beckham catch. I'm like, calm down. It's preseason. But I will say, Jalen Hyatt, the last 2 weeks, has really started to get involved in this offense. He only had 2 targets all year. The last 2 weeks, he's had 9 targets combined, and I think he's had like 3 or 4 catches for over 20 yards. So he's definitely starting to become that big play threat that we envisioned when we took him in the 3rd round earlier this year.
So I actually took Jalen Hyatt in one of the last picks of my fantasy draft in part because of that preseason game, but he's just fast. He looks like he's the fastest player on the field when he's playing. So I do want to see more about him. That was actually the next question I was going to ask you is how has he performed? What are your expectations for him? I think the kid is absolutely stellar, and he's going to cause some problems for the New York Jets if he's going to get the ball. If our defensive line can't get to you guys in enough time, if Tyrod can kind of roll out and generate a little bit more time for receivers to get downfield, that could be a real issue. Our secondary cornerback wise is really stout. You mentioned Sauce Gardner before, but DJ Reed and Michael Carter, two of the best cornerbacks. I think Pro Football Focus through all of last year had the three of them all in the top 15. I think Sauce was 1, Reed was like 6 or 7, and Michael Carter, the second, I think was like 12.
You have a running back, Michael Carter too, right? You had a running. Yeah,
we drafted him the same year. We had Michael Carter, the running back, and we got Michael Carter 2. He is a junior, the second, as a slot cornerback on the defensive side. And then last week we didn't have our top 4 corners against Philadelphia, and you still got to see AJ. So obviously AJ Brown had 125 yards or whatever that crazy statistic is that he's been doing for consecutive games. But the Jets can still cause teams fits even without Sauce or without Reed or without Hardy or Eccles on the cornerback side of things. But Hyatt's someone that I'm keeping a close eye on because he was someone I looked at in the draft as like an interesting option if the Jets wanted to add someone at a later point. You guys got him in what, the 2nd or 3rd round?
Third. We traded up, early 3rd, but we traded up the guy. I think he was 71st overall.
I like that a lot. I thought he was going to go somewhere mid-2nd. And to get him where you guys got him, I think you got some pretty good value. And I think he's going to be a good player all said and done.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he could do over the course of the rest of the year. He's still kind of limited in terms of the way that they've used him. Mm-hmm. I hope that they open it up a bit. For the most part, all of his routes have been, double moves and basically vertical routes. So they haven't really used him too much in the short and intermediate game. I'd like to see them use him in that way because if you get this guy the ball in space, he could take any play to the house. I mean, he is the fastest guy in the field, more often than not when he steps on the football field. So he's a guy that if there's going to be a big play broken in any game when the Giants play, he's going to be the guy to do it. And in a game like this, where points are going to be at a premium, one big play by Hyatt could really change the dynamic of this football game. So, yeah, I agree with you. If I was a Jets fan, that'd probably be the guy that I'd be worried about most in terms of a big play threat in this offense. Of course, you always think about Saquon Barkley. He's the bread and butter. And I'm sure that's going to be the Jets' game plan, especially with the backup quarterback in there, to limit Saquon Barkley and force Tyrod Taylor to beat you with his arm. But Jalen Hyatt's certainly a guy that you want to keep your eye on for sure. Let me speak on your offensive side of the ball, outside of the two obvious guys, which we already talked about, who are tremendous. Who's the weapon in that Jets offense that tomorrow that could have a big game against the New York Giants that you may not be thinking about tonight?
So it's the tight ends for sure. There's some sneaky stuff that the Jets can do. Tyler Conklin in particular has had a really, really good season for the Jets. Uzama is used a little bit more as a blocking tight end. And then Jeremy Ruckert, the kid from Long Island that went to Ohio State, Jets drafted him last year. A lot of Jet fans are high on him. We want to see more reps out of him. He's been a really good blocker, really good receiver when he's had opportunities. So we're curious to see if coming out of the bye, we start to see some of our younger options. So someone like a Ruckert, someone like a Gibson, who was the guy that returned the punt on opening night, Monday Night Football against the Bills. There's a lot of excitement. He's the reason why we felt comfortable trading Mecole Hardman away to the Kansas City Chiefs. And if the Jets can kind of rely on that speed, we've had Randall Cobb play, I think 50% of the snaps to date this season, which is like absolutely absurd to have. I like me some Randall Cobb.
He's like our Sterling Shepard, like that veteran that's there for, leadership and a guy that you don't really expect to have much of a role. Yeah, he's had a much bigger role than you probably expected when the year started.
Oh, yeah. I was hoping like 15, maybe 20% of the snaps, if that, and he was getting a little bit more than I felt comfortable with, around 49%. But I would say Conklin, the tight end wise, it's kind of our safety valve. When you see Zach start to roll out, Zach's getting really, really good at play action, and we're starting to run a lot of plays out of 2 tight end and 3 tight end sets. So you might have 1, maybe 2 receivers on the field, and you're going to see the Jets run heavy offensive linemen and then start running play action and get these guys out open in space. And the tight end is going to peel off that offensive line. So Conklin and Ruckert would be the 2 I'd keep an eye on.
And traditionally, the Giants struggle against tight ends. So let me ask you as a Jets fan, because I don't know a whole lot about the Jets' history off of the bye. I didn't look into it before the stream recently because I don't really care what you guys did 20 years ago. Over the last 2, 3, 4 years, how have the Jets fared off the bye? Because sometimes that's a detriment to teams because they come out sluggish, whatever. How have you guys fared in recent years off the bye?
So really not good. The last 2 years with Robert Saleh, we faced the New England Patriots. And 2 years ago, we got blown out. And I don't know if Zach was actually our quarterback at that point. He might have been hurt because he got hurt in the first Patriot game, but I don't know if he actually played the second one. Last year was the game where the Jets and Patriots, I think it was 3-3 with like 6 seconds left in the game, we punted away the ball and the kick returner goes all the way back for a touchdown. I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, I just watched the Giants in Philadelphia all over again. And we freaking lose it on the last play of the game. I don't know. It sucks. We have not really been prepared coming out of the bye, but I feel like this team, from a maturity standpoint and where the growth of our young players are right now, is a different team. So I'm hoping there's a little more energy going into this game, because if anything, if history is anything to kind of look at, it's not going to be great initially. And even at the beginning of games too, like the Jets have started off slow. We were down 17-0 against Kansas City. The Jets' second half defense is so much better than the first half defense. Jets really got to start kind of hitting the gas a little bit earlier.
We're the same way as you. I don't, somebody in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've scored an offensive touchdown in the first half all year. We had a pick six from the former Jet.
I was going to say, Pinnock.
Yeah.
Who's running his mouth a little bit.
Yeah, 99. Yeah, he is a little bit. But he took it back 99 yards. But I don't think we've had an offensive touchdown in the first half. No, maybe last week we did. I think Waller caught one. Finally. I think maybe we did. Maybe Waller had a touchdown last week in the first half. But before last week, I don't think we had an offensive touchdown. So we're the same way. We've started out really slow in these games.
And talk about the first half flub ups too. Like, you guys botched that final play. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago before half? The Jets did it like the week before, and I feel like I'm watching a mirror image of our two teams.
Yeah, dude, what? You're right. When you're describing the Jets, you're making me think about the New York Giants. When you're talking about the first half struggles, and then you got me thinking about the Chiefs game, because I remember leaving that game with such a positive impression of the New York Jets. And be like, holy crap, man! Like, Robert Saleh needs to start getting consideration for Coach of the Year with all with Rodgers going down and the way that this team is fighting. But when you mention it and I think about it, I'm like, you're right. They were down 17-0 to start that game. I didn't even think about that, after the game, because of how impressed I was with how they played down the stretch. And then, of course, Wilson fumbled with like a couple of minutes left. But yeah.
And then an 8-minute drive from the refs. Oh, Jet fans were salty about that. the flag thrown on Sauce, the no flag on Jermaine Johnson. Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah. And I saw this on Twitter right before I went live, actually. I saw Joe mention in the chat. Yeah, rest in peace, man. Friends, one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid. Unfortunately, Matthew Perry passed away like a hour ago, drowning, like something crazy. Yeah, insane. But yeah, one of my favorite shows of all time. So definitely sad news there with that, Joe.
That's terrible.
And Irish Rover says, hi, Ryan. I moved in North Jersey as a kid. For every Jet fan there was always 100 Giant fans. I wasn't aware that North Jersey was like, because for me, where I'm from Long Island, for me, it's kind of split. And on Long Island, it's, because Mets and Jets typically go together. So there's a lot of Met fans on Long Island. So it kind of makes sense. And the Jets used to play on Long Island. So it's kind of split here. But I didn't realize there were subsets of New Jersey that were much heavier Giant than Jet, because we play in the same area. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely consider Long Island a little bit more Jet territory because of the Islanders, because of the Mets. And then when I look at Jersey, New York, I feel like you're probably leaning a little bit more to whatever team has had more success recently. And the Giants over the last 25, 35 years have 4 Super Bowls. You guys have really done a lot more than the Jets have had anything to kind of write home about. But yeah, growing up, I was like me and like maybe 2 other kids in my class growing up. And it's pretty funny. I see Bergen County. I was born in Bergen County, Irish Rover. And then I grew up in Hudson County. I grew up in Warwick, New York. Just across the border there.
There you go. And I'll read the rest of that. He says, for every Jet fan, there was 100 Giant fans. You must be a Bergen County guy. I was a Hudson County guy. Great contact, Chris. Go Giants. Yeah, listen, I was glad. Last minute, I think I messaged Ryan at like 6. Really knowledgeable guy, really nice guy. And I don't think I've ever had him on my channel before. I've been on his channel at least 2 or 3 times. And I was glad to that he was willing to come on, because he definitely brings a really good perspective for the enemy tomorrow. Speaking of the enemy, you probably know him. He's active in the YouTube circles. Joe, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but he's a huge Jet fan. He's been on my channel forever. He says Giants fans all over North Jersey, including all of my cousins. So yeah, Joe's a huge Jet fan. I maybe I'm weird. And I know Jet, and I get it because I'm a Met fan. So, which is weird. I was dropped on my head as a child. I didn't choose the Yankees. I should have went Yankees, Giants. I say it all the time. But
I'm actually the opposite. So I would consider myself a Yankee fan and a Jet fan. It's really weird. I think because I've had all the losing from Jets fans, I was like, maybe I'll pick the Yankees instead.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was for me too. Maybe I was like, I got the better football team historically. I'll take my chance with the Mets. I don't know what it is, but I forgot where I was going with that.
Sorry.
I forgot where I was going with that. That's okay. That's okay. I'm having fun. I forgot where I was going with that. That's okay. That's okay. Let's see. Let's pull up a couple of questions from the chat. Sure. Jets fans on Long Island, Tim. There's tons of Jets fans on Long Island. Tons of Mets fans. It's Long Island is probably the only place on the planet where there's more Mets fans than Yankee fans. Because, of course, Yankee fans are the biggest team probably in all sports, not just baseball, in terms of having a fan base, at least American sports. But when it comes to Long Island, I think it's at least split. It's probably a little bit more Mets than Yankees. It's the only place probably in the country where it's like that. And it's the same thing. Football, I think it's pretty even. I would say there was probably – I still think there's more Giants fans here than Jets fans, but it's close. It's about a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I think Long Island for me is definitely it feels more like Jet territory. And it's because I went to school at a SUNY school, so one of the state universities in New York, and all my classmates, all my buddies are all from Long Island. And that was the highest concentration of Jet fans I've ever been around, was just being up at college. It was kind of nice for a change.
That's where I was going, by the way. The Giant Jet rivalry.
Yes.
That's where I was going, even though I don't think there should be a rivalry. But that's where I was going. I get it as a Mets fan, because I'm going to be honest. As a kid growing up, especially when I went to high school in the prime of the Yankees lure. Like, I graduated high school in 2003. The Mets and Yankees played in the Subway Series in 2000, my freshman year in high school. I dreaded going to high school every day, having to have the Yankee fans throw it in my face all year. So I get it from the big brother, little brother thing. But for me, in baseball, it's more appropriate because they play each other every year. And the Yankees are by far the most dominant team in all of sports. I never got the Jet-Giant rivalry. Never got it. They play each other once every 4 years. I have no hate towards the Jets personally. I get the big brother, little brother thing, I guess. But I have friends that are Jet fans. They were rooting for the Patriots in the Super Bowl when they played the Giants.
What? That is sacrilegious.
They didn't want to have to live in the same state as New York Giants fans celebrating the Super Bowl. And these are diehard Jet fans. Diehard. I couldn't believe it. I never understood the Jet-Giant rivalry, ever. I've never had any hate towards the Jets.
Yeah, I'm the same kind of way. I think when I was a little younger, I was probably a little more, oh, my team's better than your team. But as I've gotten older, it's like there's not really any rivalry to say necessarily. I mean, I guess it's the same stadium. You used to have the Snoopy Bowl. I think the preseason's fun, and it's the little camaraderie that you have between your coworkers, across the water cooler. But by and large, I have no disdain towards the Giants whatsoever. In those Super Bowls, Giants, Patriots, I had a Chad Pennington number 10 jersey that I put blue painter's tape over the back and stenciled in Manning on the back. And I wore it proudly to school both times. I hate the Patriots so much. The only time I don't root for the Giants is when the Jets are actively playing the Giants. Now,
of course,
I will admit I do get a little bit of delight when I see something maybe go the wrong way for the Giants, because I've just been the butt end of the joke so many times. So maybe there's a Napoleon complex thing going on.
I get that. As a Mets fan, I get it. I feel the same way about the Yankees, so I understand it from that standpoint. But I just don't. For me, the Mets and Yankees is more appropriate because they play each other every year. The Subway Series, it makes more sense to me. Football, I never got it, personally. Speaking of Eli Manning, Giants fans got to hear it from a Jet fan. I'm curious to get your take on that. Unbiased perspective. You're not a Giant fan. Is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? And if he is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
So we were talking about this during Thursday Night Football. I have a group of guys that we all hang out with, and I just turned to the Giant fan in the group, and I was like, do you think he's a Hall of Famer? Like, it's tough, right? Like, I would say the 2 Super Bowls kind of, and the last name sort of put him in that conversation, but then the Iron Man streak, the Iron Man streak puts him into the Hall of Fame.
I don't mean to cut you off, and I want to get the rest of your take on this.
All right.
But you brought up the last name. So you're insinuating that you think his last name helps him to get into the Hall of Fame? Because a lot of people agree with you on that. I actually take the reverse approach on it. So you think his last name is a factor as to why he will make the Hall of Fame, because his last name's Manning?
I think because of his last name. If there were similar like, let's say you eliminate the Iron Man streak, because I think the Iron Man streak is incredibly impressive, and he deserves to be in that conversation with that. 2 Super Bowls in and of itself, I think, is really good, but I don't know if he was the driving force. The playoff runs were incredible with him, so I don't want to take too much away from him, but it definitely, over the course of his entire career, the full body of work that you got from him didn't feel like it was a Hall of Fame caliber career. But those 2 seasons, especially beating the Patriots when they were trying to go 18-0, like that, there was just so much juice to that particular game. And when you talk to Tom Brady and he says, what's the one game that you could have back, he would trade all the other Super Bowls to get that 18-0. And I think that says something. I do think I do think Eli is a Hall of Famer. First ballot, oh man, that's a tough question. That's tough. I guess it probably depends on who else is going in that year. There's going to be a lot of good guys, I think. But I think he definitely deserves to be in it. I mean, look, as a Jet fan, Joe Namath, his stats are garbage compared to every other quarterback.
I think you laid out the argument that most people do for Eli Manning being a Hall of Famer, and it's the same thing that you could say for Joe Namath. You can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning, and you can't tell the story of the NFL without Joe Namath. Joe Namath has, I mean, you can make an argument that the Super Bowl III is the most important Super Bowl in the history of the NFL. It was 100%. The merger, right? Like, you could definitely strongly make that argument. So that's why Joe Namath's in. Let's be honest. The guarantee, obviously, he was a great quarterback, but he had injury history. Only had like 3 or 4 years before he started to really get, hurt a lot. And it definitely, his stats plummeted because of it. But of course, he was really talented. But that's why he's in the Hall of Fame. You can't tell the story of the NFL without him. I actually take the reverse approach when it comes to the name Manning, though, which is why I found what you said interesting. Cool. I think his last name was Eli Smith or Eli anything but Manning. I don't think there would be nearly as much backlash into him not, because there's a lot of people that are so against him making the Hall of Fame. I think because his last name was Manning, he was held to a higher standard. Because I think if he had a normal last name, he wouldn't be compared to his brother. And everybody would say, well, the guy won 2 Super Bowls. The guy knocked off Brett Favre. The guy knocked off Aaron Rodgers. He knocked off Tom Brady twice in the playoffs. And while I agree with you that he didn't have a Hall of Fame regular season career, he had a good regular season career. He was consistently a top 10 quarterback who had elite moments when it mattered most in the playoffs. I actually take the reverse approach on that stance. I think if his last name wasn't Manning, he wouldn't get as much backlash as he has in terms of his Hall of Fame credentials. Yeah,
it's funny. When I look at that draft class in general, and I look at Big Ben, I look at Eli, and I look at Phillip, Rivers is the guy that I look at that's like, man, I wish he had a ring or two, because I feel like his body of work over his career was better than Eli's, but Eli's got the 2 rings. So it's this weird kind of conundrum that you find yourself in, because the ultimate goal is to win Super Bowls. It's not the Hall of very good. It's, the Hall of Fame. You have to achieve that level of fame there.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'll take the guy that won me 2 Super Bowls. I'm happy. But and a lot of people say Rivers deserves to get in over Eli because they look at the stats. I will go to the grave. I honestly believe this. If we never traded for Eli Manning and Rivers was our quarterback, we don't have those 2 Super Bowls.
I agree.
So that to me makes Eli Manning he should be in the Hall of Fame over Phillip Rivers. For that, at least from a Giants fan's perspective alone. I don't think we'd have 2 rings if Rivers was our quarterback. I really don't. He had better teams than Eli Manning ever had with the Chargers, and he never knocked off Tom Brady. When Brady had worse teams than he did when he went up against Eli Manning.
I completely agree. I think you're spot on, and I think that makes the case for Eli stronger. I want to get your take on this. Would you rather have this has been a conversation that I've had with some of my buddies. Would you rather have the last 20 years of the Packers fan base or the last 20 years of the Bucks franchise?
Because the Bucks won 2.
Bucks won 2, but they've been largely mediocre for the large part. The Packers have always been in it, but they've only come away with 1.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Marlins in baseball. It's the same thing. And maybe it's something in Florida. I don't know. The Marlins, they won like two World Series, and other than that, they've been god awful. So it's similar to that with the Marlins and the Bucks. Listen, as a fan, at the end of the day, it's about the prize. That's how I feel. It's about the prize. I mean, of course, you want to have more success on a yearly basis. Like if you could have the best of both worlds. But at the end of the day, let me ask you, you're a Jets fan. And I'm not trying to knock you, but you guys haven't won a championship since 1969. Since I've been watching football, I'm going to be fair to the Jets fans if they're listening in here. From like 96 on, if you look at it year by year, you guys have probably had close to as much success as the Giants when it comes to regular season record. You had some really good teams with Pennington. You've been to what,
Three championship games,
3 AFC title games. But at the end of the day, Ryan, it's about the rings. So I'm taking the rings every time. I can make the playoffs for 18 straight years, but if I don't win, I'd rather be the team that made the playoffs twice in that 18-year span but won a Super Bowl. It's about the rings for me. You can never take that memory away from me. There's only one happy fan base at the end of the year, and I say it all the time. I will never – that win in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, and I hope Jets fans get to experience it, that win against the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, that will never be duplicated for me as a Giants fan, as a sports fan, because it was my first championship I ever got to experience as a fan. I'm a Knicks fan. Come on. Even though they weren't playing very well tonight when I went live. Hopefully they came back. They were starting to go on a little bit of a run. And I'm a Met fan. They haven't won since 86. I was born in 85. So that was the first championship I really got to experience as a fan. And the method in which they did it, it'll never be topped. So for me, it's always the rings, man. If it's the choice of 2 rings or 1, I don't care about the rest of the years. I'm taking the rings. That's why I watch. I want my team to win championships.
So for me, for exactly what you just said, and because of where I'm coming from, so I don't have any championship rings. I mean, like, I guess I've seen the Yankees win and whatnot, but I'm not super invested into baseball the way I am football. I have not seen a Super Bowl as a Jet fan, so I would take hey, we're relevant, we're in the conversation every single year. Give me the 2 MVP quarterbacks, the lights out play and the expectations each year, but only have the 1 ring. And it sounds kind of goofy to say that because I know a bunch of my buddies would say, hey, no, take the 2 rings. And it makes perfect sense. That's why you play the game. But for someone that's been making content for the New York Jets for the last 5 years.
Listen, I get it. Same for me.
I've never seen a winning season as a content creator.
It hasn't been any better for us. I mean, outside of last year, it's been just as dreadful for me. So I get it. And I get it would be better probably from a sanity standpoint. Because, as content creators or just as fans in general, over the last 5, 6, 7 years for our teams, by week 8, you're talking about the draft. So I get it that you'd rather have a team that is going to be competitive every year, is going to be going to the playoffs. I get it. I definitely get that argument, but I'm taking the rings every time. That's why I watch, man. That's why I watch. That's why they play the game. I got to go with the rings.
Are you asking me if I would I would take 2 Super Bowl rings as well? This is a win-win situation for the New York Jets. You guys already have 2 rings in the recent memory. You guys have something to lose in this whole battle. The Jets, I'd tickle pink. If I could just win 1 before I die, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I think you will. You might be 90 and in diapers, but I think you will eventually. Fabian says, without Eli, they don't win the Super Bowls, period. I mean, that's obvious.
Without Tyree and the helmet catch and Manningham, and I think it's definitely, there's a little bit of luck that comes into it, but Eli being the Iron Man that he's been and as clutch as he's been, I mean, he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah, especially the second one. The second, I think a lot of people that are not Giants fans often just blend the 2 together, and they're like, Eli Manning was carried by the defense. You hear that all the time. And the first one, that is a fair argument to have. The first one, that Giants defense was spectacular. Eli Manning in the regular season was not good. He played very good in the playoffs. I wouldn't say he played immaculate, but he played very good in the playoffs. He definitely upped his game. The second Super Bowl, that's one of the greatest seasons I've ever seen a quarterback have. And I know people downplay that, and I get it, and I'm a Giants fan, and I'm unbiased, and I get it. At the end of the day, the New York Giants that year had the 32nd ranked rushing attack. They had the 27th ranked defense in the league. He had comeback victory after comeback victory after comeback victory. He had a huge comeback victory against the Patriots, who were great that year in Gillette Stadium in the regular season. He beat your Jets in a huge game, the 99-yard touchdown to Victor Cruz.
Yep.
He beat the Cowboys down the stretch when they were down 12 points with 5 minutes to go in the game. And that's not even speaking about his playoff performance, where to this day, he still has the most passing yards ever in the history of the NFL in a single playoff. Ever in the history of the NFL, nobody's thrown for more yards in a single playoff. I'm not talking about a game. I'm talking about the culmination of a single playoff. So that year, Eli Manning carried the team. The first one, he was along for the ride. I agree from that standpoint. But at the end of the day, Fabian, he was the quarterback. Of course we don't win without Eli Manning. It's not like it was a situation like the 1990 Giants where if Eli got hurt, like Phil Simms did, that we had a guy like Jeff Hostetler that was going to come in and save the day. Our backup quarterback was Jared Lorenzen. Wasn't going to happen. So it's like, yeah, of course, Eli Manning was as big of a reason as anybody why they won those Super Bowls. 100%.
It's definitely, I definitely suffer from that bias as well, because I think I look at that first Patriot win and the streak that you guys kind of went on. Because forgive me if I'm misremembering this, but I feel like you guys lost last second to the Patriots in the regular season. And then was there a game that you won prior to going into the playoffs, and then you went on that run? You guys had the Earth, Wind, and Fire running backs. It was
You're talking about the 07 team, the 08 Super Bowl, the 07
Yeah. So I probably put a little too much emphasis on that one, because I'll be honest, I had no idea about the Eli, the yards throughout the playoffs or the rankings for the defense and whatnot.
Yeah, 32nd ranked rushing attack that year and the 27th ranked defense that year for the regular season. Giants defense played very well in the playoffs because they had a lot of injuries throughout the regular season, but nobody ever talks about how Eli Manning had to carry that awful team all year. Like, if I'm going to be, and I don't hate Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is a pretty good quarterback. If Daniel Jones was the quarterback on that team, we would have won 3 games. That's just the truth. That year in 11, Eli Manning was great. He carried that team that year. He had so many great fourth quarter wins that year. He was huge. That was definitely his one elite season, start to finish. He never had another elite year, in my opinion. He had some great years, 2 or 3 other great years, but that was his elite year. That was his one year where you said, this guy's a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league. That was definitely that was that year for him. But it is. Listen. I could talk about Eli for hours. My favorite. Who's your favorite Jet of all time? Let me guess. Let me guess. The 2 greatest Jets in my lifetime have got to be. I mean, like if you ask me as a Giants fan, you've been watching the football since 92, 93, 94. Who are the first 2 players that pop in your head when you think New York Jets? Darrelle Revis and Curtis Martin. Those are the first 2 guys that pop in my head. Of course, you've had some other John Abraham, really good. But you've had some other, Testaverde was fun for a few years, Pennington. But those are the 2 guys that pop in my head: Curtis Martin and Darrelle Revis. Revis at his peak,
incredible.
And it was not a very long peak, but at his peak was as good as any cornerback I've ever seen since I've been watching football.
Yeah, Revis was a freak. I would say he's the best player I've ever seen play. That was just incredible what he was able to do. Being able to go up against the best receivers in the game and shadow them the entire time is not something you get to see out of defensive players in today's NFL, especially because of the way the rules changed. That was like the beginning portion of the rules changing for the favor of the offense. I want to say that started shifting in like 2005, 6, 7. So Revis was really having a tough go of it in the hardest time to be a corner at that particular point in the league's history. For me, my favorite guys, and it's weird because they're not necessarily all-time greats. I think one will probably get into the Hall of Fame in Nick Mangold.
I like Nick Mangold. I like Nick Mangold.
I love the beard.
If I remember correctly, Ryan, wasn't Nick Mangold's like sister like a wrestler, like a body lifter or something, a power lifter?
Power lifter. She would like squat like 450 pounds or something crazy. It might even be higher than that. It was enormous. She looks like Nick Mangold with a wig on.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, the video was insane. But I would say my favorite Jet is Wayne Corbett. I grew up, I'm not a very tall kid. When I'm playing football in the backyard with my buddies, I went into high school at 4'9", 85 pounds, or 4'10", 85 pounds. Like I was a little bitty guy. So watching Wayne Corbett, who was 5'9", in cleats, coming across the middle, catching third downs. He was the Green Lantern. I looked up to him as a kid. So that was kind of like my favorite Jet. But I would say Revis was probably the best Jet that I've gotten to watch.
Well, Corbett was a legend. They opened a bar across from Corbett's where he went to school at Hofstra. I know that because I lived 10 minutes from the campus. It went out of business 2 years later because he couldn't get his liquor license. But Corbett's a New York Jet legend. Now, you guys used to practice at Hofstra every year. So he was a fan favorite. He was great for the New York Jets. Some other great New York Jet wide receivers: Lavernius Coles, Jericho Cotchery.
Sure, you had Santana Moss for a little bit. There were a few good ones. A lot of them have been kind of passive players. Like there was, I don't know, we had Brandon Marshall for a little bit. You had Eric Decker for a little bit. You had LaDainian Tomlinson for 2 years. You had like Thomas Jones, who had a few good seasons. We haven't really had like core guys that we've drafted and developed. Like even, Curtis Martin, we traded for him from the Patriots. So it's like still not even a homegrown player, even though he came with Bill. With Bill. Yeah. With Parcells. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I think Jet fans are excited about what this team currently is, how it's currently constructed. I mean, especially last year's draft. I mean, you're talking Sauce, defensive rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson, offensive rookie of the year, Breece Hall, who, if he did not get hurt, probably would have won offensive rookie of the year. There's a good shot he could get comeback player of the year this year if they don't give it to DeMar Hamlin. Or who knows, maybe Aaron Rodgers comes back at the end of the season and he gets comeback player of the year.
That's a hypothetical I wanted to run by you.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenny, I want to answer this before I forget. Yeah, I appreciate you for asking, Kenny. Official sponsor of the channel, Underdog Sports. If you guys haven't checked it out, there's the link right there. In terms of the promo code, it is ETS. Obviously, the Entertainer Talking Sports. ETS. You type it in there, you get 100% match up to 100. I appreciate you for asking. But that's the hypothetical that I wanted to ask you, because you talked about Aaron Rodgers at the end of the year. Let me run this hypothetical by you. And if there's any Jets fans in the chat, I want you guys to answer it too. Let's say, and I don't know your schedule. I heard that your schedule gets a lot more challenging. I haven't looked at it.
No, opposite.
Oh, it's the opposite. It started
so the first 6 weeks of the season, the Jets played 4 teams that won 12 games the year before. It was the Bills, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Eagles. The other 2 games were the Broncos and the Patriots. So now on the back half of the schedule, you got guys like, so we go Giants, Chargers, Raiders, Bills, but they don't have Trey White. They don't have Milano. Then you go Dolphins on Black Friday. And then I think we have the Texans, the Falcons, the Browns, another Dolphins game, and then the Patriots. So it's really like, aside from the division games, you're probably looking at maybe the Chargers and Browns as the 2 toughest opponents remaining. The Jets schedule, we went from number 1 hardest schedule in the first 6 weeks to like, I think 17.
I remember you had an off-balance schedule. And obviously now that I'm thinking about it, Chiefs, Bills. So the harder part's already out of the way. So let me ask you this. Let's say it's week 17. You got 2 weeks to go. Jets are having a really good year. Jets have surprised. Jets are, we'll say they're 9-6. 9-6 with 2 weeks to go. You're looking at the playoffs, and Zack Wilson has played really well. He's progressed as a quarterback. He's gotten better. Could be very valuable for a player like that to get some playoff experience, like a Mark Sanchez. All of a sudden, old man Rodgers says, I could play again. And Wilson's playing well. What do you do?
So that's a very common question that Jet fans have kind of been kicking around, and it's too early for us to do that because we haven't sniffed the playoffs since 2010.
Right.
So it's a tough question, right? You have to see how Zach's playing the rest of the season. If he's playing really well, my prediction, what I thought would happen, would be Rodgers gets activated at some point in December, and he becomes the like emergency quarterback for right now while he's getting up to speed, being healthy. They don't want to rush him back. And then the minute Zach starts to falter, then it's like, okay, we can go to an 85% Rodgers or a 90% Rodgers, because he's not going to be 100% by the time the playoffs roll around. But if this team is winning in spite of Zach, then Rodgers is going to play as soon as Rodgers is ready. If Zach is balling out and he's starting to get that like 225 yards a game, 2 or 3 touchdowns a game, they may be a little more hesitant to like force Rodgers into action. I think if Rodgers says, hey, I'm ready to go, you have to you got to trust him and just say, hey, this was supposed to be a Super Bowl season anyway. He's doing something that no one has ever done. Let's see what the guy can do. I think that's where they'd ultimately go with it. I think they would start Rodgers in a situation like that. I'm hoping final week of the season, Rodgers comes back. He breaks. So final game of the season for the Jets, week 18, is against the Patriots in Foxborough. So we haven't beaten the Patriots in 15 attempts. We have not made the playoffs in 13 years.
Wait. Now, hold on. Is it the last 15 attempts in Foxborough, or is it the last 15 attempts in general you haven't beaten them?
In general, we're talking 7.5 years.
The Patriots in 8 years?
7.5 years we have not beat the Patriots. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Oh, it's brutal. It is brutal because even though and you look at the way the Jets lost the last 3 Patriot games, last 2 really, I don't remember 3 ago, but the last 2, the kick return at the end of the game where the Jets defense only allowed 3 points and we still lost the game. And then this most recent game, week 3, the Jets were the better team. And our offense couldn't get going. It's been frustrating. But if Rodgers can come back, he breaks the Patriot streak, he breaks the playoff streak. And then I'm kind of hoping that Bill Belichick gets his all-time career losing record because I think he's like 8 losses away from that by the end of the season. I'm kind of hoping that's the way it goes. And then I ride off into the sunset. We win the Super Bowl and confetti comes flying down. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think I'm with you. I think as much as it would suck, and I saw Joe Musa say that he thinks that it would stunt Wilson's growth. As much as it would suck if Wilson was playing well, at the end of the day, if you get into the tournament, you got a chance, especially if Rodgers is your quarterback. I think you got to roll the dice. Now, if Rodgers isn't ready to go all regular season, and then his first game back is the divisional round or the wild card round, or probably the wild card round, I think I roll with Zach. But if Rodgers could get a game or two under his belt before the playoffs, I think you got to make the change because you got to look at the rest of this roster and you got to say to yourself, well, this is why we got Rodgers to begin with. We got him to put us over the top. We knew we had a legitimate top 8, 9, 10 roster in the league. We needed that quarterback to give us the opportunity to compete come playoff time, like the Rams. So, like the Rams did with Stafford a few years ago when they made the move. So, I think I'm with you. I think if it's like week 16, week 17, I think you got to make the move with Rodgers, regardless of how well Wilson may be, unless he's playing incredible. But I would worry about that. Does that stunt his growth a little bit? Does that hurt his confidence a little bit if you make that transition? It's a tough situation that I don't think the Jets thought they would be in, obviously, when the year started.
I think it's a great problem to have. I hope Zach is playing well and we have this awkward conversation of like, okay, do we play Rodgers? Do we play Zach? We don't know. The nice thing about Rodgers is he's Zach's idol. That's one of the reasons they went out to get him, along with being the best option for us at quarterback anyway. But there's a very big brother, little brother dynamic going on between him and Rodgers. And I think Zach would even be like, I think there's a situation where the Jets go into the offseason. We're supposed to either decline or exercise Zach's 5th-year option by the draft of this year. I think there's a real shot that Zach restructures a contract so that way we're not locked into the 5th-year option, but it's like, hey, if Rodgers is here, you're going to be paid like a backup. If you're starting, you're going to be paid, handsomely. Like I feel like he'd be willing to sit behind Rodgers a little bit. So if there's any kind of situation where, Rodgers is coming back and Zach might have to take a back seat, I think he'll be all right with that. There's too many good players on this team to leave it up to chance. And it's just a matter of like, how much confidence do you have in Zach? And is it enough given what you've seen over the last 2.5 years? Right now, for me, we've seen 3 good weeks of Zach. Over the course of the last 2 years, I don't think he's strung 3 games in a row that you could say are, all right, these are pretty decent. So right now I'm leaning Rodgers. I'm hoping by the end of the season, this is a much tougher conversation.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. You want it to get to that point. As a Jets fan, you want it to get to that point because that means Wilson played well. The Jets are in playoff conversation. So it's a problem that you want as a Jets fan, but it's still an interesting, I guess, conversation when it gets there. But I agree with you. I think Saleh would make the move. I do. They didn't worry about crushing Zach Wilson's confidence when they traded for Aaron Rodgers at the beginning of the year. I don't think they'd worry about it now. I agree with you. I think they would make the move if they were put in that situation. I don't know what Rodgers. I haven't been keeping up with it. I know that there were rumors that he may be back by December, but
dude, the way he's progressing right now is nothing short of incredible. They had him out of a walking boot in like 3 times faster than he should be. Like I think they said he's supposed to be in a walking boot for like 3 months or 10 to 12 weeks, and he's out of it in like 6 weeks. And then you should be like, okay, you shouldn't be like walking on it the way you are right now for even longer. And he's, throwing passes on MetLife's field before a game. So I think he's trying to manifest this a little bit, and maybe it's just manufactured hype so the Jets can sell some more tickets and people aren't bummed that they lost their franchise quarterback so early in the season. But if there's one dude that can really overcome the odds, Rodgers is the guy that I think a lot of us would probably pick to be like, okay, don't piss that guy off and he'll figure out a way.
Yeah. I've always been a big fan of Rodgers. Anybody that watches my channel knows that. I've always been a big fan of Rodgers on the field. I'm not the biggest fan of him off of it. He's kind of there's a lot of things that make me scratch my head sometimes, but on the field, I've always been a huge fan of Rodgers, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity. I'd like to see him get an opportunity to compete. We'll see at the end of the year how it plays out. I think he comes back next year regardless, and that's probably his last year in the NFL. I think he plays 2 years with the Jets. But
I think it depends on how he looks next year. If you had told me before the season, like, or not told me that he was going to get hurt, but if you had asked me before the season, I would say Rodgers is definitely playing 3 years, and he's even talking like beyond that, like from a sort of reading between the lines and some of the comments that he made throughout Hard Knocks and training camp. Now with the Achilles, I think that does shorten it a little bit. It may be a 1 year and out after next season. But I don't know. I hope he sticks around for a little bit longer. I'd love to see some good, competent quarterback play for the first time since probably Chad Pennington for me.
I want to say, I'm just thinking as we're talking throughout the stream, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, because it's so refreshing to not have to come on live and constantly answer questions from the chat about who are we drafting at quarterback. Chris, why did you say they should have signed Daniel Jones? It's so refreshing to be able to sit down and actually have a football conversation about tomorrow's game and about tomorrow's opponent. I've had a lot of fun in this stream talking about the New York Giants, the New York Jets. Guys, shout out your questions if you have any questions about tomorrow's game, the strengths and weaknesses. What's going on in Afghanistan, man? Thanks for popping into the stream, man. One of my OGs. And Noah Randolph says, yes, thank God. It's refreshing to be able to talk football and not have to talk about, oh, Chris, should the Giants tank? Should the Giants do this? I can't stand it. Okay, that's another question I need to ask you. What is your thoughts on that? Because I'm sure you get it a lot too as a Jets fan, at least in not this year, but in prior years. What is your thoughts on that? What is your stance when it comes to tanking for a quarterback?
Well, let me tell you, the first game of the season when Aaron Rodgers went down, we weren't even done with the first drive, and I'm getting Twitter messages. I'm sitting in the stadium, and there's people turning to me. So Caleb Williams, like, what do you think about him? I'm like, we're not even done with the first quarter, and you're already talking mock drafts and like tanking the season. I understand tanking. I was there when the Jets were trying to get Trevor Lawrence. We screwed it up. We had our punter tackle the kick returner against the Rams. The Jets lost out on Trevor Lawrence like in week 13 or 14 of the season, and I was distraught. Absolutely like shell-shocked from it. So I understand if you're going for the quarterback, that's 100% the move you make, but you have to look at the dynamic of the locker room. And for me this year, it was a lot of Jet fans saying, hey, look, Zack Wilson's our quarterback. Let's just get the best offensive lineman. We'll punt on the season. We'll go for 2024. We'll have Rodgers, have everything, reset then. For me, you look at Garrett Wilson, you look at Breece Hall. These guys are wasting prime years of their careers in a New York Jets uniform. You have to keep the locker room happy. You have to win as many games as possible, because I could care less about the quarterback. We have Rodgers next year. There is no question for me as to what the Jets could possibly be doing. And I think they're going to roll with Zack Wilson as the backup for next season. So if you're going for the quarterback, or if you're already statistically eliminated from the playoffs, and, there's certain situations where I can understand someone wanting to see their team lose, because I have absolutely done it. But this season, I'm very much, I want to win every game. I don't care if it's 6 games, 7 games. You got to win as much as possible for a young roster to understand what it's like to go through adversity.
So if you were the Giants, what would your thought process be? It's still a young roster.
Yeah, I would. For you guys, I think it's worth trying to win. Like, I would not actively try to tank right now. And because you have Daniel Jones,
at the end of the day, the team's not going to try to tank. But as a fan, you wouldn't be rooting for them to lose.
Correct. I think it's one of those situations where if they do lose, I just kind of throw my hands up and I say, screw it. It's the Giants. They did it again.
Yeah.
And I would like that. Like, that's where I'm at. And if I get a win, I'm like, okay, I'm entertained. I just don't want to be like Adam Gase Jets 2020. And I'm sitting here watching week in and week out of Frank Gore running up the middle for 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like, give me something exciting to watch. Cause at the end of the day, I'm here for entertainment. And
listen, Ryan, I would have killed for Adam Gase and Frank Gore running up the middle for 3 yards for a cloud of dust. I had Jason Garrett, Joe Judge, and Jake Fromm and a quarterback sneak on my own 9-yard line on 3rd and 8. I would have killed for that in 2020 or 2021 or whatever. 2021 it was. But I've been there. And Joe Moose says, I'll see you in Bad Dog tomorrow, Chris. Have a good night, fellas. Go Jets. Joe, man, thanks so much for being here. Yeah, that's right, for sure. Joe, I'll see you in the stream tomorrow. Looking forward to doing the play-by-play of the game. And I think it's going to be a good game. To get back to the game, we've been talking about it throughout the stream. I do. And maybe I'm going in too confident. maybe the Jets will blow our doors off. I don't know. I just think the way that it sets up, we're going to find out. I think this is the first week. Like, people have started to tinker with the idea, is there a quarterback controversy for the New York Giants? I don't think it's there yet. And I don't think it'll probably get there, especially with the reports that came out today with Daniel Jones, how he's going to be back in 2 weeks. But I think this is the first week where it starts to become a little bit more realistic. Like, if Tyrod Taylor goes out there tomorrow and plays really well against the New York Jets, one of the better defenses in the league, it opens up the door a little bit more for a conversation. That's what I'll say. I still want Jones to start when he comes back, because at the end of the day, I mean, and it's certainly trending towards Daniel Jones isn't going to be the long-term answer either. But Tyrod Taylor's not. He's 35 years old. At the end of the day, that Tyrod Taylor's a stopgap. So I still want to see Jones come back in this offense, hopefully with Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley. But I think tomorrow's the first game where you say to yourself, if Tyrod plays really well in this game, maybe there's something there. I think it's the first week where you start to think about it.
Yeah, I think there's some level of conversation that probably has to be had. Like, okay, maybe if Tyrod beats the Jets and he looks good doing it, then maybe you say, okay, Jones, you have to earn the starting role back or something. But at the same time, I look at Daniel Jones, I say his ceiling is so high. He's Josh Allen light. Like, and you look at Josh Allen since day
I would
one.
rather see Jones. I'm with you.
Yeah, I would rather see Jones out there if I was a Giant fan, and you just trust that they can kind of figure it out. If the offensive line can get together, I don't think Jones is a bad quarterback. And I just think his ceiling is so high. I mean, he looks very similar to Josh Allen in certain respects. Like, there's the wow plays with his legs, but then Josh Allen has this uncanny ability of like causing a bad turnover at weird times. And I feel like I sort of see something similar to that in Daniel Jones. And I'm not saying Jones is Josh Allen, but a light version of it. I'd rather have that upside than whatever you'd get from Tyrod. Tyrod is like, he'll give you baseline 20 to 16 level quarterback play, and you really won't go much higher than that. I feel like Daniel Jones, if he's clicking and he hits on his talent, is similar to like where Jet fans might feel about Zack Wilson, where, his floor is really low, but his ceiling is so much higher than some of the other guys you might be able to bring in.
Yeah, I'm with you. I still think Jones has the potential is still there with Jones. I will not go as far to say Josh Allen. Neither did you. You said Josh Allen light.
Yeah.
But I definitely think he has potential. The problem with Jones is, one, I think he's shell-shocked. I think he's got a mental clock in his head that because this offensive line has been so piss poor that he's just getting the ball out the first chance he gets. And obviously that's leading to corners jumping the routes. But from a physical skill standpoint, I agree with you. I think he has everything that you want in a quarterback. Now, is he elite? No. I don't think he's elite. I don't watch him. Like, Josh Allen's elite. I watch Josh Allen, and that guy makes throws that quarterbacks in the league can't make. Same thing with Pat Mahomes. But from a physical skill standpoint, he has everything that you want in a quarterback. The size, the speed, the arm strength, the accuracy. But it just doesn't come together. And I think a lot of it is his processing. And I think it's a mental clock in his head. And we've seen him regress this year. And that's what's been so disheartening, because coming into the year, as a Giants fan, you say to yourself, wow, Jones last year, he had no help. And it was a brand new offense outside of Saquon Barkley. His best wide receiver was Darius Slayton. Now he's year 2 in the offense with a play caller that knows what he's doing. You add Darren Waller. My expectations were sky high. No, sure. I don't want to say Josh Allen high. I thought he was going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league, if not damn near close. That's why I think Giants fans have been so deflated because of that. But I agree with you. I do think he's got talent. It's why I wanted to sign him back in the first place. You got to take a chance with a guy like that to see if he could morph into what his potential can be, especially when you pick a 25th and you don't really have many other options.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I like what Daniel Jones could be, and if he hits that potential. And on the Jets side of things, when you're looking at Zack Wilson, it's very easy to say, okay, Zack has been horrible his entire career in the NFL. And then Jet fans are kind of harping on the last 3 weeks. So it's like, well, hey, look, since the Chiefs game, Chiefs, Broncos, Eagles, those are, at least 2 of the 3 are really good teams. And you extrapolate that over a 17-game season, all of a sudden you look at Zack Wilson's completion percentage, 63%. completion percentage. Yards would be about 3,600 yards on a season, which would put him 8th in completion percentage last year and would put him 12th in yards last year. So even though the red zone stuff hasn't been figured out and they're not scoring the points, Zack is at least playing above average quarterback play the last 3 weeks, without the scoring, unfortunately.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting decision what you do with Zack Wilson at the end of the year. If he continues to play well, because you're going to be in a similar spot to the Giants were last year with Daniel Jones. So I think you're going to have to sign him if he puts you in that spot where you're picking at the back end of the first round.
So we've got this is his 3rd year. So we have to decide. We have to decide on his 5th year option. But if I had to guess, we're not going to exercise it. So it's either we go into next year as year 4, the way you guys did with Jones, and then we franchise him after that year, or we run into a situation where we give him like a Band-Aid contract, maybe like a Jordan Love, where we say, hey, we want you to be the starter. We're going to, kind of have this bridge contract. I don't know. The nice thing is we have the rest of the season to kind of evaluate Zack, but it definitely feels like it's going to be a very eerily similar situation to what you guys dealt with this past offseason.
Yeah, I for some reason I thought it was the 4th year for you're not signing him on the 5th year option. I don't think. Well, you could, but it would be like a $24 million hit against your cap that you wouldn't be able to move.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do it.
Roster, I don't think you pick up the 5th year option.
No, because I think the Jets are hoping they get that extra year out of Rodgers too. Like if they get the 2 years post injury, I think they'll go for that as opposed to trying to go with the young kid. I think they would rather draft quarterback. Might be on the menu for the Jets in the draft this year. I don't think it'll be 1st round. I think they could look at it as early as the 3rd round this year, and then maybe sit him behind Zack and groom him behind Rodgers for potentially 2-3 years.
Developmental piece. Yeah. And Pete, man, I think you meant to donate this. Thank you for the $5 donation. He says, I am pulling for DJ too, but he just doesn't have the situational awareness. He needs to be an upper tier quarterback. I mean, I agree. Listen, I obviously people know I didn't love the draft pick. I reacted like a child. I didn't love the draft pick. But I've given him, I think, as fair of an opportunity as I could. And last year he played, I thought, really well, given the circumstance. Much better than I thought he would, if I'm being completely honest. And I was for bringing him back, but I agree with you this year, Pete. He hasn't shown any growth. As a matter of fact, he's unfortunately regressed. And I know it's not all his fault, but at the end of the day, you're the $40 million quarterback. So you can't defend him anymore. Once he signs that contract, there's no excuses at that point. You're paid to elevate the players around you, and he hasn't done it. And granted, it's been a small sample size. He got hurt. So I'm still giving him the rest of the year before I completely axe him and say he's not going to be the long-term answer for the Giants. Let's see how he does over the last 7 or 8 games. But it's definitely been incredibly underwhelming as a Giants fan. But I do want to say, I don't think we're in quarterback hell. I think a lot of people look at that and they say, and even though he's playing better this year, the Broncos are in quarterback hell. They got Russell Wilson to an obscene contract, a contract they can't get out of for probably another 2 years after this one. And they're kind of in quarterback hell for me. We're not in quarterback hell. We have a contract where we could pivot if things go south. So I don't think it's as detrimental as some fans are making it out to be in terms of the signing of Daniel Jones. So that's just my outlook on the situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at Daniel Jones' contract, the way you have to look at it is Jones preventing you from signing someone else on your team or preventing you from adding a player that would have otherwise been a future piece for you guys? If the contract isn't impeding you from doing any of those things, is it really, that bad of a contract? Because you're trying to figure out the franchise quarterback is the biggest piece of the whole puzzle.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I like that you said that at the top of the stream. You agree it was the right decision. Sometimes the right decisions don't produce the right results.
Yeah, there's plenty of solid, concrete reasoning for why a team does a thing at one point, and then it just doesn't work out. Like, look, the Jets trading away Sam Darnold the year they wanted to take Zack Wilson. In hindsight, you don't take Zack Wilson. You either trade Sam still, and then you wind up trading back. So the Dolphins traded out at 3 with the 49ers. The 49ers gave up a haul. You're telling me the 49ers wouldn't have given up the same haul to their former defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh, just one pick further? So I would take the extra 2 first-round picks. I'll take Micah Parsons, and I'll figure out the quarterback another year. Like, the hindsight sucks, but at the time, taking Zach at number 2 was the right move.
Yeah. I still think Wilson could be a good quarterback for you guys. Maybe I believe in him more than I should. Adam, man, thank you very much, man. Last time Jones played with Barkley on the field, they put up 31 points and a half. Just saying. That's true. Against the Arizona
Cardinal game?
Yeah, he put up 31 points in the second half of that game, and then Barkley didn't play, and Jones obviously got hurt, and Andrew Thomas got hurt early in the year. So, Adam, it's why I have not come out and made a video saying I'm completely done with Jones. I've started to open up the conversation of if this season spirals out of control, that's where this could go. But we still have more than half the season left, and we got to see when he comes back. But the other thing that you have to talk about with Daniel Jones now, even if he comes back and plays well, the other thing you got to worry about with Daniel Jones long term, this is now a pattern. He's had injuries. I mean, this guy has only had 1 year in his entire career where he has not missed multiple games in a season, and he's now had 2 neck injuries. That's a factor. When you're talking about committing a Jalen Hurts-like contract to him or a Joe Burrow-like contract to him, like the Giants gave him basically a contract that was, we think you could be a franchise quarterback, but let's find out. They didn't give him a franchise quarterback contract. They didn't give him blind faith contract. And if he gets to that point where you're going to give him a blind faith contract, that has to be factored in because he's had some pretty serious injuries early on in his career. So that also has been a deterrent for Daniel Jones this year.
So that was something I wanted to bring up earlier too. And I started to, I guess, with the Eli conversation, but Eli, Peyton, Tom Brady, they did something when they were quarterbacks that you just don't see quarterbacks today do. And that's throw the ball in the dirt, live to fight another day, slide, don't take the big shots. And I feel like guys today try to put the whole team on their backs and not realize that, like, hey, if you're not out there on the field, you can't help us win. And I think Jones is a little bit of that hero ball kind of mentality, and that's probably hurting him to some extent.
Yeah, I think we're also spoiled as Giants fans because you look around the league and a lot of quarterbacks get hurt. Maybe not every year, but especially in today's day and age where they use the quarterbacks basically as a dual threat quarterback, his style of play. As Giants fans, we took Eli Manning for granted, especially from that standpoint, knowing that he's going to go out there every single Sunday and play. But neck injury to me is serious, especially when it's a reoccurring neck injury. So that, that's something that has to be factored in if you're Joe Schoen long-term with Daniel Jones. Unfortunately, I'm rooting for the guy. I want him to be the answer. I would like nothing more than for him to be the next Eli Manning. I say it all the time. I want to look like the biggest fool in the history of New York Giants fandom. Oh, you were the asshole that had the Daniel Jones reaction. That was me. And I'm damn glad that Daniel Jones proved me wrong. But I'm a root for, I root for him as much as I possibly can. I'm a fan at the end of the day. But I got to be fair. That's something you got to be concerned with if you're a Giants fan long-term with your quarterback. 2 neck injuries, that's serious.
What did you think of the Lamar Jackson contract? Because that's sort of a similar type of a situation with how the injuries happen down there. A lot bigger contract, obviously, but
yeah, I mean, listen, the Ravens are playing well this year. I personally, if I wouldn't have been in love with giving Lamar Jackson that contract, and I think Lamar Jackson is great, but to me, his style of play is not sustainable long term. Like he's going to get hurt. And if you keep playing like that and you rush for 800, 1,000 yards a season, and I do think when he is forced to play more from the pocket as his legs deteriorate over the next 3 or 4 years, he's not going to be nearly as effective as he is now. So that was a big contract. That was a lot of guaranteed money. And listen, if the Ravens win a Super Bowl, it's brilliant.
Oh yeah.
But it's riskier than I think most of these quarterback contracts that have been shelled out because of his style of play.
Yeah, it's very similar to the old saying, the star that shines twice as bright burns half as long. That's kind of how I viewed Lamar Jackson. Like, he's going to have an elite 10-year career, but he's not going to have that potentially 15, 20-year career like a Burrow might have, or one of those other quarterbacks that aren't maybe running around and throwing their body around the same way he is. Like, I think Josh Allen is going to be similar to a Cam Newton, where he's going to get 10 years into the league, 11, 12 years, and his body's going to start to break down.
Yeah. And yeah, that's my mindset there. And I saw Knicks fan in the chat says, Tanner, you watching Jackson right now. He's one of the best pocket passers in the league. I'm not trying to knock Lamar Jackson, but if you take away his dual threat capabilities, he's not going to be nearly as successful in the pocket, in my opinion, because that's something the defense has to account for. He's one of the best, and I don't want to like downplay he's a quarterback, but if he was a running back, he'd be one of the best running backs in the league. So if he is not as effective from that standpoint as he gets older, that's going to hurt his effectiveness as a thrower. It just is. That's a big strength of his. So, and I think that style of play, like we talked about with Jones, lends itself to injuries. That's just me. Like, that's my preference of quarterback. My preference of quarterback is a guy who is capable of running, but doesn't need to rely on his legs to be successful. Russell Wilson is a perfect example in his prime. Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes can run, but he doesn't have to. That's just my preference in terms of a quarterback.
Yeah, and when you talk about Lamar too, it's one of those situations where he has like such elite speed and such breakaway speed that the defense has to play him differently. Your edge rushers are not crashing down. You're playing contain with him. So you're not seeing he's getting more of a pocket because you're saying, hey, you got to beat us with your arm. And you're leaving a linebacker in to spy him or a safety in to spy him. So that way he doesn't rip off the 30, 40 yard electric play. So yeah, it's tough. I agree with you. I think Lamar, once he loses his legs, will become less effective unless he kind of becomes, I don't know, until we can see him really, I can't even say really.
You know what? Let me see Lamar do it from the pocket in the playoffs when he's playing a good defense. And if I see that, because that's kind of been the knock on Lamar, when he's got to the playoffs and he's played really good defenses and they've limited his ability to hurt them as a runner, he's struggled. That's kind of been the knock on Lamar. So let me see him grow. Let me see the evidence. But that's just my outlook on it. I just think his style of play lends itself to injuries. That's the biggest thing, which why I would be a little bit scared to give that big of a commitment. But if they had to do it, like the Ravens have been competitive since he's gotten there, they had to do it. I understand why they did it. Alex says, to be honest, everyone's saying that the Jets have so much more talent than the Giants, and the Giants don't have much talent. I don't agree. I believe the Giants have more talent, honestly. Whoa, Alex, I like it. I like it. I think
want to go position group by position group and see.
I think the Giants have talent, Alex, but I think the Jets have more talent. If I'm being completely honest, I think the Jets have more talent. Like, all right, let's go position by. Well, I can't even call the offensive line a wash. You guys have to have a better offensive line. It can't be worse than ours.
Your offensive line's so bad. Well, let's call it a wash because they're both bad. Like, I think your defensive line is going to take advantage of our offensive line. I think our defensive line is going to take advantage of your offensive line.
Yeah, I think we probably have the best individual offensive linemen between the two units, probably.
I think Andrew Thomas, when healthy, yes, for sure.
Yeah, Veritas is very good for the Jets. But I think left tackle, the importance of the position. But as a unit, I'd probably give the edge to the Jets. Maybe not a huge edge, but we'll call it a wash. They're both not good.
I think there's an argument with Barkley and Brees, like running back wise.
I call that a wash, to be honest with you. I think Brees Hall is tremendous.
Yeah, I think they're both really talented, and we've only seen Brees through 1 year, and he got hurt with the ACL, so it's hard to argue like a durability thing one way or the other. I would call that a wash too. I don't really know who your backup running backs are, so it's hard for me to comment on that.
Eric Gray, nobody of significance. I would call it a wash. Wide receivers, Garrett Wilson alone is better. He makes your wide receivers
He's so good.
He's so much better than any of our wide receivers.
Yeah, so, I would say, yeah. I think he's better. You guys got Slayton and Hyatt, which who else am I missing in there? There's a few other guys, right?
Hyatt, Hodgins, who's been non-existent this year. Wandale Robinson, who's shown flashes. Paris Campbell, who's been a nothing this year, who I was really excited about. But
you probably take Garrett Wilson first of any of the wide receiver options.
Yeah, it's not even close. Let me look at the Jets depth chart at wide receiver. Hold on. But yeah.
Jets depth chart, you're talking Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, and then it gets washy because Corey Davis retired or left the team just before the start of the season. Mecole Hardman was just traded. So now you're talking, is it Randall Cobb? Is it Gibson? We have like 2 or 3 undrafted guys towards the back end of the roster that we're excited about, but they don't really get much playing time because of the tight end usage that we have.
I'm looking at it. If you include the tight end, I'm going to call I'm going to call our whole offense a wash.
I think that's probably fair because I think Waller's better than any of our individual tight ends, but I think we're 3 tight ends deep as like solid. But I would say offense wise, they're probably pretty similar. Like you could almost like meld the 2 teams and have like a really good friggin' team.
Yeah, I would call our overall offense pretty much a wash.
Mhm.
I don't think you know what? The talent's probably not as far away as people are making it out to be. Defensive line, Quentin Williams is great. Dexter Lawrence is at least comparable. They're both great.
Yeah.
Interior defensive linemen.
We're
Your
super
linebacker
deep.
core is really good. CJ Mosley's really good.
Mosley and Quincy Williams, Quinnen Williams' brother, he's playing like the most improved player on the Jets roster by far. We have the best tandem of linebackers, maybe next to the 49ers.
So, yeah. So, I mean,
Stacked.
even though I've been really encouraged with Bobby Okereke, who's played really well for the Giants.
He's looked really good for you guys.
Yeah. But I got to give the edge to the Jets at the linebacker.
Secondary-wise, it's got to be Jets.
What'd you say?
I was going to say secondary-wise, it's got to be at least cornerback-wise.
Yeah, no, secondary's Jets. Secondary's Jets. I'll say the pass rush is a push, even though you guys have a really good pass rush. I think we do too.
I'm excited to see Kayvon. I haven't really we got to see him in the preseason, but not much. You guys have been letting him blitz more, right? Like he was dropping back into coverage a little bit early on.
Yeah, he's got 5.5 sacks now. He's got. What's so funny is there. I don't know if you saw the tidbit on WFAN with Carl Banks. He went on. He's actually coming on my channel, which I'm really excited about on Tuesday.
Oh, that's cool.
He went on WFAN. He got into a huge fight with the 2 Jets fans, Brandon Tierney and the other guy. I don't remember his name, but Salicata, who's actually on my channel a couple of years ago. And they were ragging on Kayvon Thibodeau. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is like the worst, stupidest, dumbest time to rag on Kayvon Thibodeau. The guy's had 5 sacks in his last 4 games. What are we talking about? So yeah, no, he certainly played better. Dex is great. Leo's very good, even though he hasn't played great all year. He had a nice game last week. I think it's comparable. I think our pass rush are the overall defense, though. I'm in agreement with you. I'm giving us at least a moderate edge to the Jets for the overall defense.
Yeah, and even special teams wise, like I think Gano's really good. I think Zerline's really good. Like overall, this will be a close game. It's going to come down to who creates the most mistakes for the other team, and that's ultimately who's going to end up winning.
Yeah, like going in. If I'm being completely honest, I think the Jets are at least slightly better. I don't think they're definitely not better to the point where you go into the game and you say to yourself, we got no chance. No, I think this is a close to coin flip game. I think it's like you said, it comes down to the team that is better prepared, who comes out with a better game plan, and who executes better. And I think we have the edge, at least in terms of. I don't know enough about your coaching staff, but I think Wink's a really good defensive coordinator, and I think an inexperienced quarterback going up against a guy like Wink. You look at the Washington game last week, it could lend itself to a lot of mistakes. So I think this game more so than most is going to really come down to who has the better game plan, which coach out executes the other in terms of the game plan. I think it's a pretty tight matchup.
So it's interesting. I see Knicks Nation in there saying Tyrod and Zach is a wash, or are you guys going to pick one? That's the interesting piece, right? Like
it's a wash for me. It's a wash.
Yeah, I think either one could kind of not perform well. I think I trust Tyrod to perform at a baseline level where like I feel like the Jets could really win some games with a Tyrod level quarterback, where Zach could really beat the best teams in the league if he performs to his like the level he can perform to. It's just there's so much undulation in his like performances that it's hard to, Yeah,
I think Tyrod is safer, but I think Zach has probably a little bit higher of a ceiling.
Yeah, lower floor.
In this type of game, though, I'd probably rather have Tyrod because I think I trust Tyrod more not to lose me the football game.
It's supposed to piss rain tomorrow too, so it might be like a ground game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I'd be stunned if it wasn't. I think it's going to be. The Giants have actually played a lot better against the run in recent weeks, but they were awful before that. Miami was running the ball, and they run the ball over everybody, but they were averaging 15 yards a carry against us. So if you're the Jets, especially in the rain, I agree with you. I think you got to try to feature Breece Hall, and I think we're going to do the same thing with Saquon. Big Dash, what's going on, man? He says, By the way, go check out Big Dash. Awesome guy, content creator.
Ooh.
He says this game comes down to who is able to get the lead first. That's going to be, yeah, because that's definitely a big part of it. We've said throughout the stream, it comes down to who makes less mistakes. But yeah, listen, what's going to lend itself to more mistakes if you're playing from behind, if you're playing out of your element, I think both of these teams, their style of play, they want to, every team wants to play with the lead, but especially these teams where they rely on their defense. They want to be able to run the football. They want to limit mistakes. If you're down 2 scores, suddenly you have to do things that you're not necessarily comfortable doing. So, yeah, I think I agree with you, Big Dash, because I think the team that gets out to the early lead is less prone to make the mistakes. So I agree. This is a game where typically I like to kick off. I think I want to start with the ball. I think I want to get the lead on the Jets early on. So it's a good point by you, Dash.
Yeah, I think for the Jets side of things, we're probably, if we won the toss, we would defer. I think we like sending our defense out first, kind of setting the tone. And over the course of the entire season, we've definitely underperformed in the first quarter and have exceeded expectations in the second half. So even if you guys, have a 7-point lead or maybe even a 10-point lead, I would not kind of close the door on the Jets just yet because
definitely not.
The pass rushers we have are just so good and they're so fresh late into games. Like when you have Evan Neal or, whoever your offensive lineman is taking his 60th snap in the fourth quarter and you got Bryce Huff coming off the edge taking his 20th snap, like there is some fresh legs that you got to worry about in the second half for this Jets defense, particularly the defensive line.
Which is why we got to get out to a lead. So we don't expose Tyrod Taylor to that pass rush in the second half. We got to get out to a lead. Let's see. We're giving too much respect towards these inferior teams. The only way the Jets lose is if Zach shits the bed. Sean's coming in hot. Sean's confident. I saw him say it earlier. Hey, I get it. Giants haven't been good this year. We'll find out what happens tomorrow. But you're coming in confident, my man. We'll find out what happens tomorrow, Sean.
If the Jets can convert on half their red zone opportunities that they did the past few weeks, Jets should win this game.
I agree with that.
I think
you can say the same thing about the Giants because we haven't been converting on the red zone either. But I agree with that. Yeah, that to me it comes down. That's a big factor for both, and I think we will struggle in the red zone because you guys have been really good inside the 20 defensively. We've started to get better in that area too. But what's so ironic for the Giants last year, that was our strength. We were so good offensively in the red zone. We were 5th in the league in terms of red zone efficiency. We're like dead last this year. We can't score when we get inside the 20. It's been a complete reversal.
Now, what do you think that is? Like for the Jets side of things, I can look at and I could say, okay, we've had this, weird shoot ourselves in the foot type moments where it's, Zach takes a really bad sack or, there's a penalty or something goofy kind of happens. Like we had this really great red zone opportunity and then Lazard has a crackback block on, I forget who it was against the Eagles. And now all of a sudden we're 15 yards further back. We're not even in field goal range anymore. And we have these weird sort of hiccup situations come up where maybe a guy drops a pass and you can't really pin it on one particular player. Can you guys pin it on someone necessarily for you guys?
Had a lot of, especially in the first few games, we had a lot of really bad penalties once we got into the red zone. Like I think back to the Cowboys game, our best lineman, Andrew Thomas, got hit with a false start. Then we had a bad snap. So we ended up losing like 15 yards there. We've had a lot, and there's been a lot of other penalties we've had when we've gotten inside the 20. So I think that's been a factor. We haven't executed nearly as well when we've gotten there. I think some of it certainly falls on the play calling. As good as the play calling was last year, some of it absolutely falls on the play calling. And I think Barkley not being in there for a lot of it, that hurt too. Barkley last year definitely had a lot more to do with why this team had success offensively than a lot of Giants fans gave him credit for. And a weapon like that inside the 20 is going to help you tremendously. And also some of it's got to fall on Jones. Jones hasn't executed as well as he did last year inside the 20 also. So I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. I think when you have that big of a retracement, when you go from 5 to like 32 in the red zone, it's not one thing. It's like 4 or 5 different things. But yeah, we've had a lot of sloppy penalties when we've gotten in there. That definitely stands out in my head for sure.
Yeah, as long as the teams kind of clean it up. I mean, penalties, turnovers, that's going to be the key to the game tomorrow.
Oh, no doubt about it. Who's going to execute better than the other team? Who's not going to lose the game? That's what it boils down to, man. That's what it boils down to. And now Sean says, now watch. Zach's going to shit the bed. I hope you did. I hope you did, Sean.
Way to go, Sean. Way to go. What happened? I'm by myself now. It's okay. What's up, chat? I'll talk until Chris comes back over here.
I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, he's back.
I knocked myself out by accident. That happens every now and again. We'll go for about another 15, 20 minutes, and then we're going to get some sleep because we got to get ready for the game tomorrow. We'll answer some of your questions in the chat. But I definitely want to, we talked about this briefly before we went live. Definitely want to do something with you during the offseason. I like you a lot. I think there's a market there. There's interest there for a dual New York football show, especially in the offseason when there's a lot to talk about. So, it's something that I definitely want to get around to this offseason to do something with you because I like you a lot and I like talking more than just the Giants.
Oh, it's a lot of fun too. There's a lot of like New York sports media out there that kind of has fans pulling their hair out. And I feel like we could bring a little bit more level-headed conversation to the listeners.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Maybe not so much around draft time. You start pulling our hair outs for like overreactions and stuff, but that's all right.
Yeah. Let's see. John says, love being a first-time season ticket holder, but you and Bad Dog give me some sanity. I appreciate that, John. I try, even though we're not the most sane people at times, but I try to be as level-headed as I could be. Let's see. Durant says, maybe y'all replace BT and Sal. That'd be cool. Let's call WFN. Let's get on there. That'd be fun.
Right? Love it.
Yeah.
Got to come up with a catchy name. I don't have a catchy name.
Lane says, will it be a high to, I think maybe you meant to say, will it be hard for the Giants to win on Sunday? Maybe you said, I think it's hard for the Giants to win every Sunday. I mean, but it's just the truth. I mean, we're a team that can't afford to make mistakes, man. And what's going on in Afghanistan? Good to see you. If all I had to listen to was folks like Sal, I wouldn't listen. Well, he's not even a Giants fan. He's a Jets fan. Let's see. Giants fan picked the Jets. No, I didn't. I'm taking the Giants, Sean. I'm taking the Giants. Let's get to that real quick.
Okay.
We've talked all night. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I think the over-under is 36.5. I looked at it briefly before we went live just because I was curious.
Yeah.
Jets are favored by 3. I've got the total points right around the over-under. I've got 33 total points, so slightly under. The rain plays a factor for me, just the style of play. If it's going over, I think it's going to be because of like a defensive touchdown. Like there's going to be a pick 6 or there's going to be a fumble on the 3-yard line, something like that. But I think it's going to be a field position game. And I actually got the Giants by 1. I'm going to go 17-16 Giants in a really low-scoring affair.
So I'm definitely taking the under on the points for sure. Weather definitely plays a factor in this. I would say, I don't know if a team's going to score a touchdown. Like I could see this being like a 12-9 stinker type game where like someone gets a safety and it's going to be some weird friggin' lopsided, unconventional score that we get. I'm going to take my Jets. Obviously, I think if we take care of business the way we should take care of business, I think we should win. But it's not going to be the cakewalk that I've heard some Jet fans kind of talk about because like we said earlier in the stream, hard part of the schedule is over with for the New York Jets. Now it gets easier on the back half of the schedule. A lot of fans are going to start overlooking the Giants, and it's not a good idea. You guys are way more scrappy. You've heard all offseason how the Jets are going to go on this Super Bowl run. They've got Aaron Rodgers, all the stuff from the preseason and everything. I think the Giants are going to get up and get ready to play this game. You can't call any game for the New York Jets a trap game, but this one is definitely one that could punch them in the mouth and kind of catch them a little bit off guard.
Yeah, I think that there's at least a little bit of momentum off of last week for the Giants. I think they're going to – and the defense has played really well. They played really well against Buffalo. They played really well last week. Even in Miami, we gave up 31 points, but one was a pick 6, and the other one was a fumble recovery on the 7-yard line. So even against Miami, they were playing pretty well. So this defense is going to keep the Giants in the game. Don't fool yourself if you're a Jet fan. I don't think you're walking over us in this game. The Giants have a good defense. They do. I think it's starting to evolve, and I think the defense definitely keeps the Giants in this game. It comes down to, like we've said throughout the whole stream, can Tyrod Taylor not lose the game for us? Don't lose the game. Don't turn the football over. Make some key third down conversions when you have to. Move the chains with your legs, whatever you got to do. But I think the same thing for the Jets. Obviously, I think they have a tremendous defense. Look what they did with the Chiefs game. Look what they did with the Bills, the Eagles. So I think it's going to be very tight. I think both defenses are really good, and it's going to be a competitive game. I don't see it being a blowout either way. I think Vegas has it right. I think it's going to be like a 3 or 4 point game. I got a 1 point game, but I think it'll be a close game.
Yeah, I think the spread is spot on. 3 points, and it's a coin flip. It really is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's see what Nick says. I think Deontay Banks has another great game and limits Garrett Wilson. I'll say this about Deontay Banks, and I'm not going to go in cocky. He's a rookie, and Garrett Wilson is really good. But, I mean, you look at some of the receivers this guy has gone up against and the way that he's played. Deontay Banks has been great so far for the Giants this year. He's a rookie. You don't want to get carried away, but we've gone up against Terry McLaurin. We went up against the 49ers. We went up against the Cowboys. We went up against Miami with their receivers. He's held his own each and every week. So I could see him. That could be a good battle tomorrow. I think that'll be a good battle tomorrow between those two. Deontay Banks is good.
It's going to be fun. I think it's almost more so Zack Wilson versus Deontay Banks than it is necessarily Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a freak. He definitely is. I mean, he's really tough to catch in a phone booth, but a lot of what Garrett's going to be able to do is going to be hinged on what Zack can do. And I think I have far more confidence in Garrett than I do in Zack, but it's going to be a fun matchup to watch. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's see. Giants only scored over 16 points one time this year. That would be correct.
You guys were averaging like 5 points a game at one point in prime time.
Sadly, that would be correct. We had 31 points in one half. But outside of that, the offense has been, I will say last week, if you're being fair, Gotham, we had a missed field goal from 42 yards out that Graham Gano never misses, and it was windy conditions. And Saquon Barkley, for only the third time in his career, put the ball on the ground on a carry on like the 13-yard line. So that's at least another 3, if not another 7, because we were going down. So the offense definitely showed, and it's against Washington. This is another level in terms of a defense. But the offense definitely, I think, performed better than what their point total suggests last week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a, I don't want to say it's been smoke and mirrors, but it's the same kind of thing on the Jets side of things where we could have scored more points, but it's, self-inflicted wounds. It's not being able to convert in the red zone. It's inopportune turnovers. If it's Zach, dropping a fumbled snap against the Chiefs or throwing an interception at the tail end of the game against the Broncos where it gets the Broncos potentially back in it. It's tricky. Both sides have not been offensive juggernauts by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm looking at the Jets schedule, though. Let me pull it up real quick. Like you were saying earlier, if you do win this game, you got to be flying high because then you look at the Chargers haven't looked great. You're home. Nope. They're traveling across the country. And then you've got the Raiders on the road, but the Raiders aren't any good.
Yep.
Then there's a 2-game stretch there where it's tough with Buffalo and Miami, but then Atlanta, Houston.
But what's nice, so the Bills, we beat the Bills week 1, and they had Milano. They had Trey White. They don't have them anymore. They do have Von Miller back, obviously. It's in Buffalo. I kind of chalk that one up as a loss. I figure it's a split in the division games. But Miami hasn't beaten a team over 500 in over 365 days.
Miami's a tricky team for me because when they look good, they've been incredible. They put up 70 points against the Broncos. But like you just said, whenever they've played a good team this year, they've lost. And they've lost pretty badly. So they're a tricky team for me. I agree with you. I think the Jets will get a split against Miami. I don't think Miami's as good as some people may think. Yeah. But if you're a Jets fan going into this game, if you win tomorrow, I think you start thinking playoffs. I think it's a monster game for both teams because if the Giants win, I think Giants fans start to at least say, we got a shot because the NFC is so bad.
Yep.
We're 3-5. And then our 3 out of our next 4 games, you've got New England, who stinks. You've got Green Bay off a bye. You have an extra week to prepare for that game, who's not very good, beatable. You've got Washington again. And then you got the Cowboys, 3 out of the next 4. So if you win tomorrow and you get to 3-5, you could at least convince yourself as a fan, we could win 3 out of the next 4. And if you could win 3 out of the next 4, all of a sudden you're 6-6. So I think it's such a big game for both teams. If the Giants lose, I think we're clear sellers at the deadline. The bank's open. Have at it. If the right deal is there, we're going to trade away our players. But it's going to be interesting to see what Shane does if we win. Does he? I don't think we'll be buyers, but does he sit on his hands and not do anything and let the season play out? So
that's what I was going to ask you. Like, as far as trade deadline stuff goes, are there any players? We mentioned Barkley earlier. Like, if you got offered something really nice, maybe you consider it. Are there any other players that you're looking at possibly moving or acquiring at the deadline?
Not acquire. Well, the only way I even consider acquiring a player is if it's like somebody who's more so for the future than
Mhm.
for just this year specifically. Like if it's like a really young player that
Mhm.
they feel fits the long-term interest of this team, like a Jerry Jeudy, for example.
Yeah.
That could make sense because Jerry Jeudy's a really young wide receiver. That's as much for the future as it is for now, if
Mhm.
the right deal was there. So I could see an acquisition like that, possibly. But outside of something like that, I think we'd be sellers. And if we're sellers, I mean, the only Leonard Williams is a clear guy we'd look to trade, but you're not getting anything for him. The
Mhm.
value in that trade is you get rid of the contract. Same thing
Mhm.
happened with Snacks Harrison when we traded him in 2020. We got a fifth round pick because the contract was really high and a
Mhm.
team was willing to eat the contract. So we ended up being able to get a fifth round pick for him. So a player like Leo, you're not going to get a whole lot for.
Mhm.
The only guy that would get back anything relevant would be Saquon.
Mhm.
That's the only guy I could see getting a second round pick or more for. You're not going to get that for McKinney. He's walking at the end of the year. He's been a good safety, not a great safety. Adore's hurt, and even if he wasn't, you're not getting that for him. So Saquon to me is the only guy that could really get anything of value in a trade for the like real value in a trade.
Yeah, from the Jets side of things, there's no one that we're looking to move that would get us a lot in a trade. Like we're looking at maybe offloading guys or just acquiring small pieces, like trading away Dalvin Cook. He's done at the end of the year. He's really got no place in our backfield. We have younger guys that we'd like to see get reps. Carl Lawson is someone that you see, might get moved to maybe the Raiders or someone like that. Maybe you get a late round, fifth round, sixth round pick. And at that point, it's just, dumping off a contract, saving a small portion of cap space, and getting a controllable young player for 4 years in the future.
Yeah, another guy that I think is interesting the Giants could maybe trade to like he's not good. He hasn't played well for the Giants, but I could see a team rolling the dice on a guy like Paris Campbell, for example. Maybe a
Mhm.
team like the Chiefs, who don't have the best wide receiving core,
Mhm.
they could find something. Maybe they're like, we'll give you a 6th round pick for him. So I
Mhm.
could see a player like that getting traded too. But in terms of like a semi blockbuster, the only guy I could see is Barkley. I don't think unless it's an exact situation that I said where it's a young player that's part of the future. And the Giants actually did it with you a
Mhm.
few years ago where nobody saw it coming because the Giants were bad.
Mhm.
They traded for Leo, which at
Yep.
the time people were scratching their head, why are you doing that? But I think that was it was for the future as much as it was
Mhm.
for the present. So I think it would have to be a deal like that where this guy's going to be a big contributor for this team for the next 4 or 5 years. It's not like a deal where it's an over the top type move because the Giants clearly
Mhm.
aren't thinking about the here and now in terms of competing to win a Super Bowl.
Mhm. Yeah, for the Jets, we're looking at maybe a wide receiver. Like there's been some talk of, okay, do they go out and try and get a Cortland Sutton? Maybe there's some, move where DeAndre Hopkins gets moved if the Titans wind up being sellers. Uh, Mike Evans is the one that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. I don't think it's going to happen in season. I think there's a possibility of it happening after the season just because his age and contract would match up well with Garrett Wilson when he winds up getting paid. I think you could pay someone like a Mike Evans for 2-3 years at an elevated level while you have a rookie contract Garrett there. But yeah, and plus the Jets' first and second round picks right now are still technically tied up in escrow because there was a condition. If Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps,
That's right.
then the first round pick goes to Green Bay. Now he's not going to be able to hit that, but you still can't trade either one of those picks because theoretically it could still happen.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes
Mhm.
sense, but I did not know about that. So yeah, I knew about the trade and the potential draft pick, but I didn't know that you couldn't trade the. Well, it makes sense that you can't trade the
Yeah,
pick.
I only just recently found this out. I thought as soon as Rodgers went down with the Achilles, I was like, well, he's definitely not hitting it. The first round pick's up on the table now again. As far
Yeah.
as I wasn't thinking about trading that pick, but I didn't think you couldn't trade it until I did a little more research into it.
If I was a Jets fan, though, I don't think I'd want them to be ultra aggressive. If
Yeah,
I
no.
if I'm being honest, because as excited as I am, if I am a Jets fan this year, because I would
Mhm.
be, because you guys have fought really hard and you guys have definitely shown you have a good football team. I think it's fair to say that at this point, the Jets are a good team, even
Mhm.
without Aaron Rodgers. In the world of reality, especially in the AFC where it's a stacked conference, I don't think that you should just be thinking about this year.
Mhm.
So if I was a Jets fan, maybe a small move, but
Mhm.
I don't think I'd prefer like a blockbuster move where you bring a not this year at least, maybe next
Mhm.
year if Rodgers is back and the team is really showing they're a true Super Bowl threat, different story. But right now, if I was a Jets fan, I think I'd want them to stand pat. I wouldn't want them making any outlandish moves.
Yeah, no, that's definitely where I'm at. I would say maybe I sell off some of the pieces I don't want to necessarily see on the field, like a Cook or a Lawson. But what are you getting? Like a late round pick swap, maybe sixth and a seventh round pick, whatever. But yeah, I'm not buying if I'm a Jet fan. I don't think.
Yeah, I think the Giants and Jets are in a similar spot in terms of the trade deadline, which is we've been all too familiar with in recent years. We're sitting on our hands because we're not good enough. We're not good enough to be buyers. So that's probably where we're at. But guys, we're gonna wrap this up. Enjoy the game tomorrow. I appreciate all you guys for coming on. Probably gonna do this weekly if I can get other content creators on throughout the rest of the year. We'll see. But I had a lot of fun doing. Teams were playing that week, but had a lot of fun doing it tonight. I figured tomorrow, juicy game, Jets Giants, would be fun to talk about it. I appreciate Ryan coming on, taking the time out. I would say best of luck tomorrow, but I'd be lying to you. I hope we find a way to get the win. But after that, best of luck the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, stay healthy. I want to see you guys, rest of the season out. I want to see you guys at as full strength as we could possibly play yet. I'm looking forward to watching how you guys develop over the course of the season, and I appreciate you bringing me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and by the way, once again, link in the description. If you guys could tolerate Jets content, go on over there and check him out. No, he's a good guy. Check him out. Brady G says, salute, guys. Let's go Giants. Let's go Giants, man. Thanks for popping in the stream, man. Nick, be good. Have a good night, man. Lane, be good. Amazing guy, be good. I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys know I stream the game. 12:30, I'll be live. I think it's a 1 o'clock game, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so 12:30 we'll be live on the channel. So come on by for that, and we're going to kick their ass tomorrow. We're going to win. Giants are getting to 3-5. Have a good night, everybody, guys. Be good, guys.